on a rainy day. A group of people from a martial arts school arrived out of nowhere, entered the Taoist temple and asked if the master was present, saying they wanted to trouble him a bit. Before the unending rain in this desolate place, a young boy suddenly appeared right there. The group of people were also surprised to see this young boy. Noticing that the boy was standing in the doorway, the leader of the group understood and stood still outside the temple. He had a pair of bloodshot eyes and was around 50 years old with a stern face, examining the desolate surroundings, wondering why there were people in a place like this Taoist temple. Young hero, may we ask to stay for a night to avoid the rain? The protagonist silently stared at the people in front of him. The boy was cautious, wondering who these people really were. Although he was young, they still showed respect with a bow and polite words. Could it be that they thought he was a young Taoist priest in charge of this abandoned temple? But they didn't seem to be bad people. After thinking, the boy cupped his hands in greeting and said, "I am just someone who has been staying in this abandoned Taoist temple for a few years. You can rest wherever you like. However, the place where I am currently using, please do not disturb. I hope you can choose another place to rest." The man also cupped his hands in response, thanking the young hero for being so polite despite his young age, saying they would do as he said. Then he turned around and instructed his disciples, "Everyone listen carefully. Quickly move away. Do not approach the young hero's room. Find another place to shelter from the rain, understood?" They all obediently followed his instructions. As the rain grew heavier, the group from the martial arts school quickly dispersed to find rooms to shelter. The protagonist stood still, observing the emblem on each person's clothing, and gradually understood. It turned out that they all belonged to the same family, sparking curiosity about what kind of people they were. But now there was something more important. The protagonist politely bowed to the leader of the group and quickly left. The boy entered his main room, with uncontainable excitement on his lovely face. "Oh, my love, it's time to eat," he said as he walked and jumped with joy as if going to meet his beloved. Looking at the jars filled with insects in the room, the boy opened the lid and looked inside with a delighted face. Inside the jar were insects that looked like crickets. The protagonist held the jar of insects in his hands and said with a pout, "I almost forgot you guys. Must be hungry, right?" Then he proceeded to open the lid of another jar and found a black earth tiger inside, a type of spider native to Hainan, China, known for its large size, up to 20 centimeters, and distinctive coloration reminiscent of a black tiger. The boy happily used chopsticks to feed crickets to the spider, saying, "Eat a lot. Otherwise, I don't know what I would do without you guys." Seeing the spider devour its food greedily made the boy happy too. From being as small as a fingernail to molting twice and growing so big, the boy was overjoyed, saying, "Big brother is really happy," after seeing that his pet had eaten its fill. The boy continued to a nearby storage cabinet. The protagonist opened the cabinet right in front of him and found geckos, specifically tokai geckos, inside, a native species characterized by striped patterns on their bodies and tails. The boy revealed a strange enthusiasm that no one knew about, exclaiming, "In my past life, it was so hard to buy you guys. But here, I can find you everywhere just by going out and then fed them." Suddenly, a gecko jumped up and bit the boy's hand, causing him to cry out in pain. The reason the protagonist started raising these creatures was due to his passion for insects and a rare reincarnation experience, as he was previously a streamer in the modern era. As a streamer with millions of followers specializing in Faber creatures, it wasn't difficult for him to talk about the creatures in front of him, mainly about insects and venomous animals. But the problem he faced when preparing for a new content was that the live broadcast was organized to celebrate reaching 1,000,000 followers. The content of that broadcast was about the 10 most dangerous venomous snakes in the world, and everyone was fascinated by the black mamba, knowing it was the most notorious for its aggressive nature. Then going all the way to Africa to find the black mamba became a disaster. Faber sat on a chair sighing to his fans, saying it wasn't easy. There was no black mamba just lying around like stray cats on the street. After speaking, he stood up and told everyone that he needed to rest for a bit before continuing the search. The audience couldn't wait for the result, urging him to go on. Faber, Feeling thirsty due to fate's will, walked to the cabinet to grab a drink to quench his thirst, complaining about how tired he was and wondering why it hadn't appeared yet. While there was a snake coiling itself on top of the refrigerator, when he felt the pain from the snake's ambush, Faber was startled and shouted loudly. Some of them as sansei were delighted while others were worried and asked if he had been bitten. In Africa, what number do you call instead of 119? Due to the extremely potent venom of the snake, Faber felt dizzy and collapsed on the floor of his rented room, admitting that he died instantly. Back to reality, he was still engrossed in feeding his lizard. The protagonist thought to himself that when he searched he couldn't find it anywhere, and yet it was hiding on top of the refrigerator. The young homeowner suddenly appeared in front of his room door without warning. A moment later he asked if the missing hero was inside. Fearing that his strange hobby would be discovered, he quickly released the lizard into the drawer and closed it. Then he went out front to chat with the man, stuttering, "What's going on?" With his friendly demeanor, the man replied, "We're grateful to have been given shelter from the rain. Would the hero like to join us for dinner?" The man added, "We just hunted a deer." Upon hearing this, the protagonist's eyes lit up and he stuttered, "A deer." Upon hearing about meat, the protagonist's eyes began to well up with tears of happiness, reminiscing about the times he had skinned and roasted his own pets to survive. "I'm sorry I've only been eating snakes and lizards all this time," he said. The protagonist jumped with joy, exclaiming, "If I'm allowed to share it, I'll be very grateful." The man smiled and invited him. "Then let's go." After a while, the rain finally stopped, and the bright moon shone through the dark clouds. At this moment, everyone was gathered around the bonfire with a large piece of venison placed on it. Seeing the deliciousness of the meat in front of him, the protagonist couldn't wait any longer. His eyes widened, and saliva began to flow uncontrollably. The man observed the protagonist's longing gaze without saying a word. Finally, he told the protagonist that the meat needed a bit more time to cook. "While we wait, can I ask you a few questions?" The protagonist, feeling embarrassed and losing his composure, quickly responded with a polite, "Please go ahead and ask, sir." Without hesitation, the man asked, "Do you live alone in this mountain in Hainan? How old are you this year?" After a moment's thought, the protagonist replied, surprising the man, "I think I'm around 14 or 15. The man asked again, "Are you sure?" The protagonist thought for a moment before responding, "Since I was injured as a child, I don't remember much about my past." This touching story moved the man to exclaim, "What an unfortunate tale." The man asked, "Have you been living alone here all this time?" The protagonist replied, "Yes, I have no skills, so I survive by catching snakes, skinning them, and selling them." The man's face turned red with concern. "A young hero like you taking such risks to catch snakes." The protagonist, having had experience with venomous creatures in his past life, found it relatively easy. He bowed his head. "I'm used to it, so it's fine." While the two were chatting, an elderly man with white hair brought a portion of cooked meat and said to the protagonist, "I've brought my share of the cooked meat. Take this first." Upon hearing this, the protagonist's eyes lit up. He clasped his hands together, beaming with joy. The elderly man smiled. "I saw that you looked very hungry, so I said that." The protagonist politely thanked him. "Thank you, sir." Holding the meat in his hands, the protagonist enthusiastically told the elderly man that it had been a long time since he last had meat. As soon as he finished speaking, he took a big bite. The more he chewed, the more he felt blissful, thinking, "This is true happiness." Seeing the protagonist eating eagerly, the elderly man joked, "The young hero is eating very heartily." A moment later, the man spoke again. "Young hero, keep eating and listen to what I have to say." The man's expression turned serious. "We're looking for something. Have you seen anything unusual around here?" The protagonist asked curiously, "What do you mean by unusual?" Seeing the protagonist's confusion, the man hesitated, unsure if he should continue. The elderly man suddenly spoke up. "The young hero has granted me a small favor. Can we tell him, Sai?" The elderly man continued, "If we're not careful, it could be dangerous. Besides, he's living alone, so he won't tell anyone else." The man agreed. "Indeed, my father's words are always right." With that, the man said, "We're looking for a large centipede with spots on its back." He immediately described its appearance in the most concise way, People call it the jade centipede. Its size is quite large, so you must have seen it before. He was amazed when he heard about its size and wondered if it was really that big. Then, out of curiosity and eagerness, he asked again, "If it's big, how big is it?" Based on the records, he thought for a moment and replied, "If it's a grown one." The next words he spoke made the young man shocked, his face turning purple and his mouth agape. He simply replied, "It's probably big enough to swallow a young martial arts practitioner whole easily." Hearing the abstract description of its size, the young man thought it was just a story from hundreds of years ago. The young man's face began to change color as he thought to himself, "Who would have thought that there would be a centipede so large? It was as if this was a different world." The old man beside him couldn't help but say that the young martial arts practitioner seemed frightened. The old man with white hair was calm and composed, stroking his beard, and said, "Don't worry, we've come to catch it." Upon hearing that someone wanted to catch it, the young man curiously asked again, "Are you going to catch it to keep as a pet?" Hearing such a naive question, both the old man and the other man couldn't help but ask, "Back, keep it as a pet?" After speaking, the old man curiously stroked his beard. Then he burst out laughing, saying, "Keeping a jade centipede as a pet? That sounds interesting." The seated person beside him tried hard to stifle a laugh and replied, "This young martial arts practitioner is quite interesting." The old man quickly stated the true purpose of their visit today. "How could we keep such a thing as a pet?" "We're going to use it to make medicine." Upon hearing this, the young man's expression changed from excitement to indifference, and he asked again, "What did you say?" The young man's face showed his displeasure as he thought to himself, "I thought they were business partners, but it turns out they're just medicine traders." As soon as he thought this, he asked, "Are you sure you want to do that?" The old man's expression became serious when he heard the seemingly simple question. He clenched his fist and said, "It might be so, but my granddaughter is currently bedridden with a serious illness. It turns out that jade centipede is the last resort to help our old man's grandchild. He said that only the core of the centipede can save our granddaughter, so we are trying to find it." He immediately became surprised and replied, "If it's your granddaughter, then..." Simply put, the core is a crystalline substance formed from the accumulation of vitality in the bodies of animals that become spiritual beings. The man sitting beside him continued, "It's my daughter we're talking about." The young man quickly grasped the situation, stroked his chin, and said, "The child is on the verge of death, so they want to try every possible means." Although the centipede is not medicine, the love of parents cannot be different. Looking at the father's devotion to his child to the point of traversing mountains and rivers to find a seemingly non-existent creature, the young man felt a sense of sympathy and thought, "Poor, pure-blooded centipede, but since I've been invited to eat it, I'll help." After thinking this, the young man spoke about the centipede, and upon hearing that he seemed to have a clue, the old man immediately changed his demeanor and eagerly asked, "Have you ever seen it before?" The young man replied, "No, I've never seen it." After hearing this, the old man became disheartened and responded listlessly, "I understand." Just a moment later, the young man showed a dangerous glint in his eye and continued, "However, even though I don't know what a jade centipede is." Hearing that there was still a glimmer of hope, the old man turned around in confusion. Looking in the young man's direction, he saw that the young man seemed very confident as he opened his eyes wide and smiled slightly. "I can guess where it is. With my experience from my previous life, although I died after being bitten by a snake, with the experience I've accumulated, I can confidently say that my knowledge of toxins is unmatched by anyone else." The young man stated that out of approximately 7,000 living species, around 20,000 are known to be venomous. "I've stored all the knowledge about them in my head, one species at a time, and centipedes are no exception among them. With my knowledge, the matter of the venom is within my grasp." Faber held a book and focused his entire spirit. The pages of the book continuously turned, emitting a magical glow. After a while, he closed the book, opened his eyes, and said with a smile, "I've found it. Faber winked and said excitedly, "So if it's a large centipede, I think I know where it is." Tang Shan asked in surprise, "What really?" Tang Jun also chimed in, "If that's the case, where could it be?" The young man was lost in thought, then looked at the two people who were puzzled. "I don't know which areas you've searched and at what time. Can you tell me?" Although he didn't know why Fabre was asking. Tang Shan replied, "We've searched the north and east areas around here mainly during the day. In the north, we mainly searched along the riverbank." "No wonder you could not find it." The two men were taken aback when Fabre said this, and of course they couldn't detect it. Tang Jun blurted out, "What do you mean, of course?" The old man eagerly asked, "Can you tell us the reason?" The young man smiled smugly and said, "Okay, I'll tell you. Regarding centipedes, they belong to the arthropod class, subclass, multi-legged order centipede. They have a wide range of activities. And as ectothermic animals, they need a hiding place to maintain a stable temperature and humidity. Interestingly, unlike most insects that have a waterproof cuticle, has a weak waterproof membrane with breathing holes on the shell surface, so they actually don't like places with too much water. Although they need a humid environment, they don't like areas with a lot of water. On the contrary, without humidity, they can't survive for long. This is a unique characteristic of the centipede species. Sitting by the porch, Fabre continued to provide information. Therefore, the jade centipede, with its large body, is highly likely not to dwell in dense forests or near rivers. Tang Jun looked puzzled. "We can't believe it. So the place that centipedes prefer isn't rotten wood crevices." He said that some small centipede species can be found in such places. "You must be referring to a large centipede, right?" But Fabre continued to elaborate. "If its body is large, then fallen trees in the forest or rocks by the river won't be suitable, because there's nowhere for it to hide." After listening, Tang Shan and Tang Jun looked at each other and nodded slightly. Sitting next to him, the old man said anxiously, "If we find it where you pointed out, we will certainly reward you handsomely." He smiled smugly and pointed to the mountain in front of him. Fabre confirmed the west direction and guided them. "You should try searching on the rocky mountain to the west. The centipede species usually rest under rocks warmed by the sun during the day and only come out at night. At night, the moonlight shines on the steep cliff. On the cliff, everyone was assigned to search. At the top of the mountain, Tang Shan stood firm, observing. He frowned, looking concerned. At this moment, someone ran up to him and said, "Master, what if the young master's words are wrong?" He pondered and said, "Really?" Jumping down to the ground, Tang Shan gave the order, "Let's rest here for today. Fire a signal flare to Su, gather all the search teams and troops." The soldiers acknowledged. "Yes, master." The signal flare was fired, shining brightly in the sky. People were resting and complaining. "Oh, we're so tired. Hopefully the young master's words will be correct." They discussed among themselves. "Why can't we find that damn centipede? It's really frustrating. The young master seems quite intelligent, though." Suddenly they heard a commotion near Tang Shan. They saw him gritting his teeth, shaking and saying, "Tang Yini, considered the most talented in the history of the Tang sect. Has the heavens truly abandoned us?" At that moment, someone shouted, "The patriarch has returned." Everyone greeted in unison. "You're back, sir." Tang Jun walked up to Tang Shan. The old man asked about the situation. "Didn't find anything today, did you?" He replied, "Yes, father." Then asked back, "Didn't you find anything either, father?" Tang Jun coughed slightly. "Well, yes, but the situation didn't look good. Tang Yini could only hold on for 3 more months at most. It was uncertain whether they could find it within the next 10 days. The two were silent, sharing the same concern. He suggested to his father, "Why don't we try searching on the south side tomorrow?" Since they hadn't found any clues yet, the old man sighed and agreed. "All right." Suddenly, Tang Jun exclaimed in surprise, "Nothing at all." Then he slapped his forehead and laughed loudly. "That's right. How could we have missed that? It's right here." Seeing a glimmer of hope, Tang Shan asked, "Have you discovered something, father?" But contrary to expectations, Tang Jun replied, "No, you're right. I didn't find any signs or feelings at all." He looked puzzled. "Really?" the old man confirmed. "Because there's nothing," and added, "That's why I feel it's here." Looking around, Tang Jun asked, "Have you guys found any signs on this rocky mountain in the past 3 days?" Tang Shan replied, "No, we didn't find any signs." He stroked his chin and said, No animal droppings or territorial signs. We didn't find anything. Just as he finished speaking, he was startled and exclaimed, "Could it be?" Seeing that Tang Shan had grasped the issue, the old man exclaimed excitedly, "That's right. How could there be no signs of animals on such a large rocky mountain?" He clenched his fist and muttered, "This is its territory." Tang Jun responded happily, "Yes, that's why all the animals around have fled, or have become its prey." The old man patted Tang Shan's shoulder and comforted him. "The jade centipede must be here. Now we can save Yini." He seemed to have found a glimmer of hope. Biting his lip, he said, "Finally." Before he could finish, the ground shook violently. People panicked and shouted, "What's happening?" Some shouted, "What is this thing?" Others were so frightened that they trampled on the fire without even realizing it. Right at the spot where the fire was burning, a loud explosion occurred, shaking the sky. Tang Jun and Tang Shan were stunned, exclaiming, "What is that?" A sharp claw appeared, striking the ground forcefully. The soldiers were frightened, stuttering. That rocks and debris were falling down on them. The old man turned pale and exclaimed, "That's..." Before their eyes, a body with many legs gradually appeared. The head was also visible. A giant centipede appeared. It was the jade centipede. At the same time, inside the city, upon hearing the commotion, Fabre became restless and exclaimed, "They're making a big fuss again." He lay down wondering, "How big is that centipede that they're so panicked? They said they were just going to look for it, but they ended up turning the whole mountain upside down." Fabre sneered, "A centipede big enough to swallow me whole." He was actually excited. "I'm really curious now." The night scene in the mountains. People were surrounding a dead centipede. Tang Jun opened the box and said, "This is the core jade centipede." Everyone around was sobbing, but the old man covered his emotions with his hand and coughed, saying that Yini could now be saved. Tang Shan, his body battered, went to his father's side and asked him to lead the uninjured warriors to Sichuan first. Tang Jun wondered what he meant, looking into the distance, and replying that one must repay kindness and avenge grievances with grudges etched into blood and gratitude into stone. Tang Shan asked if there wasn't still something to be done here, and the old man patted his head, remembering and saying that he had almost made a big mistake because he was too focused on Yini. Tang Jun put away the box containing the core, saying that they should treat the young hero as an honored guest and fulfill any requests he might have. He replied that they should let the injured warriors stay in the village to recuperate and that he would go meet the young hero. Tang Shan added that the young hero was probably eager to know their news. Fabre's face was surrounded by strange animals, and despite their clinginess, he said that he didn't know what to do with this situation. Just one night, and he had become the father of jade centipedes. In some room, Fabre muttered to himself that when he got home, he cleaned the egg and placed it beside his pillow. When he woke up in the morning, he saw the young ones crawling on him and said that they had all hatched. They were round with ears like rabbits and were very cute. Fabre controlled his emotions, muttering that he had expected this, but was still surprised by how quickly they had hatched. He glanced at a young one sleeping beside him. Suddenly, one of them slipped and fell, and he panicked, supporting it and saying that they should stay away. Fabre muttered, wondering if these little ones considered him their mother, as they clung to him and refused to leave. The previous night in some mountain crevice. Were these divine insects big enough to swallow him whole? If he couldn't withstand this, he wouldn't be the strong Fabre. It was at the secret hiding place of Jade Centipede that he found them. The closer he got to the cave, the more terrifying it became. He kicked something and shouted, "What the heck is this? A beetle as big as a fist!" The torch in Fabre's hand fell to the ground. The beetle, one knee on the ground, was panting heavily. Fabre wiped away sweat, saying that it was a close call. He looked into the bag and said that there were still 3 eggs safe. Fabre rubbed his head, muttering that it was lucky the rain had stopped, or he wouldn't have saved any eggs. Suddenly he discovered something. Fabre stood up, saying that they couldn't delay any longer and had to return to clean the eggs. He tied the bag of eggs tightly around his waist, saying that they were ready. With a joyful face, Fabre exclaimed that his little centipedes should wait a moment, and he would give them a good cleaning. Later, when the eggs hatched, he sat and sighed that although he hadn't seen the jade centipede alive, saving the eggs was a great fortune. The little ones clung to Fabre, who said that they seemed to have no intention of leaving him. The mischievous young ones crawled down his back and Fabre muttered that although he knew they wouldn't need to eat until their second molt, it was still awkward having them cling to him like this. Fabre suddenly realized that if he went into the water, they might automatically leave him. A wicked smile appeared on his face, showing his bad intentions, and the centipedes became frightened. He said that they should take a bath then. Early in the morning, Tang Shan, his body bandaged, went to some place. He walked to a room. Tang Shan called out loudly, asking if the young hero was inside. Standing outside the door, he called out to the young hero. Tang Shan noticed that there was no response from inside the room. He reached out to the door. He pushed the door open and entered, saying that he was coming in. Looking around and seeing no one, Tang Shan noticed the various medicinal herbs jars and medicine chests. He wondered if the young hero was skilled in medicine. Tang Shan sighed, muttering that it was impolite to enter an empty room without permission. He turned to leave, saying that he would come back later. Suddenly, Tang Shan heard strange noises. He curiously turned back, muttering about the sound. Behind Tang Shan were large jars. He walked quietly towards them. Tang Shan opened the lid of a jar. His face showed surprise as he exclaimed, "What is this?" Tang Shan saw a spider holding something white in its mouth. He looked at the medicine cabinet and said, "No way." Tang Shan went to open a drawer. He saw an orange-striped creature and muttered, "Stone accumulation." He was surprised by what he saw. In this jar were brown insects. In another jar were strange eggs. In a box were dried snake bodies. Tang Shan was shocked and stood still, muttering. It was as if he had entered a place with all kinds of terrifying creatures, and he couldn't believe it. Tang Shan thought that the young hero was breeding poisonous creatures and making them reproduce. Even the Tang clan, famous for their expertise in poisonous medicine and creatures only managed and extracted toxins, but couldn't figure out how to breed them like this. He closed the door, stepped out of the room, and muttered to himself, "Thanks to a small fate, I was able to save the life of my beloved daughter." Tang Shan clenched his fist and said, "It turns out that the fate is really with this young hero." Suddenly there was a call from behind him. "Old predecessor," he replied. "Young hero." Fabre hurried over and asked, "How is your arm? Are you injured somewhere else?" Tang Shan put his hand on Fabre's shoulder and replied, "It's nothing serious, but what I need to say is..." Suddenly he sensed something and muttered, "What is this?" A wicked aura appeared behind Fabre. The door was broken and a figure slowly appeared. A monstrous creature emerged, filled with killing intent. The creature's face was terrifying as it smiled, revealing sharp teeth. Tang Shan quickly pushed Fabre aside and shouted, "Young hero, get out of here!" Fabre didn't understand what was happening and asked predecessor. The creature prepared to attack. Yunsheng charged forward, destroying everything in his path straight at Tang Shan. He gathered his strength and delivered a powerful blow to Tang Shan. Tang Shan was seriously injured after blocking Yunsheng's attack and coughed up blood. Yunsheng's attack was so powerful that it caused massive destruction. Tang Shan collapsed to the ground. He wiped the blood from his mouth and muttered, "A master on the same level as my father." Tang Shan stuttered, "Young hero, run!" Just as he finished speaking, Fabre was grabbed by Yunsheng and lifted high into the air. Fabre struggled to breathe and called out in a broken voice, "Predecessor!" Yunsheng laughed loudly. Yunsheng said, "I heard that the Tang clan had entered Hainam, so I came to check. But I found that the venomous snake of the Poison God clan was injured and alone." Tang Shan struggled to stand up, coughed a few times, and asked, "Who are you? Why are you bullying this young hero?" Yunsheng laughed loudly and replied, "You'll know when you see this face and my red hand. Your father made me like this. I am Yunsheng, the Bloody Hand Devil." Tang Shan remembered Yunsheng's past appearance and muttered, "Yunsheng, I heard he was poisoned and fell off a cliff by the sea. It seems he survived." Tang Shan saw Fabre struggling in Yunsheng's grasp and shouted, "This young hero has nothing to do with us. Let him go, I'll exchange my life for his." Yunsheng held Fabre's neck and said with a smile, "I don't like people who touch me. They will die. You, Tang Shan, are a master who harms the world." Tang Shan gritted his teeth in anger and muttered, It seems you have no intention of releasing the young hero. Faber was being strangled and was on the verge of losing consciousness. Yunxiang laughed loudly and said, "Da." Faber struggled to say, "Please, save me." Faber's desperate appearance made the eyes in the darkness shine. The small centipedes from Faber's body rushed out and attached themselves to Yunxiang's arm. The centipedes bit Yunxiang. Yunxiang was shocked. Yunxiang quickly released Faber and tried to brush off the centipedes, shouting in pain. The centipedes injected venom into Yunxiang, causing him to cough up blood. Yunxiang collapsed to the ground, cursing. "Damn it!" After that, he lay motionless at Faber's feet. Faber was frightened and muttered, "Is he dead?" Faber kicked Yunxiang's body and asked, "Are you still alive?" Tangshan was shocked and opened his mouth in surprise. Then he smiled and muttered, "Not a noble guest, young hero." Faber poked Yunxiang's body with a stick, considering whether to become a member of the Tang clan. A few days after Yunxiang's collapse at the Taoist temple, a sigh of relief was heard in the room where Faber was taking care of Tangshan. Tangshan, who was lying on the bed, spoke up. "Thank you, young hero." Faber saw Tangshan speaking and said, "If you tell me where it is, I'll go check." Faber was hesitant, scratching his chin, thinking, "It's not good to leave the old man alone, but I also can't call a doctor." Tangshan heard this and quickly said, "I'm fine, don't worry. Just rest for a few days and I'll be okay." Faber was amazed at Tangshan's calm demeanor, despite being severely injured. He remembered Tangshan coughing up blood and reassuring him, and immediately countered, "Don't say that your condition is critical." Tangshan took a breath and weakly replied, "I'm fine." Tangshan added, "I'm a martial artist after all." Faber was surprised and asked, "A martial artist? What do you mean?" Faber asked curiously. "You mean those people who can fly and use magic?" Tangshan smiled and replied, "Not everyone can do that, but it's somewhat correct." Faber was amazed, thinking, "This world is really different. If not, how could there be a centipede as big as a house?" Tangshan interrupted Faber's thoughts. "Anyway, young hero, you saved my life. It's a great favor. Let me formally greet you." Tangshan introduced himself. "I am Tangshan of the Tang clan from Sichuan." Faber also introduced himself. "I am Faber." Tangshan closed his eyes and praised Faber. It means little dragon. What a nice name. He looked at him and asked, "Moreover, we have many things we want to ask." "I don't know if it will be all right," he replied politely. "Yes, please go ahead and ask." He expressed his doubt. "Is the creature containing poison with black aura a centipede?" He looked down at the larvae attached to his body, gently poked one, and confirmed. "Yes, it's a centipede. These are the larvae of the jade centipede." Tangshan was surprised, sitting up abruptly and exclaiming, "You said you've tamed the larvae of the jade centipede." He was taken aback by Tangshan's reaction and shouted, "Senior, please lie down first." Tangshan ignored his advice and continued, "Where is it? How did you tame it?" He hesitated slightly before responding. "Perhaps the story will be a bit long. Do you want to hear it?" Tangshan cleared his throat and said, "It's okay, go ahead and tell me." He began to recount. "Then I will start from the story of the jade centipede." The night outside the Taoist temple was quiet and still, as if listening to Faber's story. After hearing the whole story, Tangshan asked in amazement, "Wait, you mean you took the eggs and raised them yourself?" He replied, "Yes, that's right. I can estimate when the eggs will hatch." Tangshan, sweating profusely, thought for a moment and asked, "How can you know when the eggs will hatch?" he said. "Please wait a moment, Senior." With that, Faber unlocked the cabinet. He took out the creatures from the cabinet and suggested, "Do you want to see these?" He took out one and introduced it. "This is an ordinary lizard found in caves. It has yellow stripes on its body and white stripes on its tail." He took out another one and described it. "And this one, those with large white stripes on their tails are selected for breeding. The result shows these two distinctive colors." Tangshan stared at the creatures in front of him, his face pale, and exclaimed, "Could it be?" He shouted, "They say you've created this color." He confirmed enthusiastically. "Yes, isn't it beautiful?" Tangshan swallowed hard. He questioned, So if we breed only those with strong poison, can we create an even more poisonous species? He smiled slightly, seemingly puzzled by Tang Shan's words. He was thinking deeply. In theory, it's possible. After some thought, he said, if we know which one has stronger poison, then of course it's possible. Tang Shan was surprised and exclaimed loudly, "Really, is that possible, making him jump?" Tang Shan placed his hand on his shoulder and seriously suggested, "You should join our Tang clan." He was taken aback, huh? Tang Shan continued, "If you join the Tang clan, we will teach you all our martial arts techniques without reservation. You'll have access to rare herb spiritual plants and any poison you want." Tang Shan enthusiastically persuaded him. "If you join us, you might be able to catch or raise one of the top 10 poisonous creatures in the Central Plains, as rumored in the martial world. If this isn't enough to convince you..." Tang Shan was about to use his trump card. "My daughter, one of the 3 treasures of the Central Plains." Fabre hastily interrupted. "Wait!" He asked, "What did you just say?" Tang Shan was also taken aback. "Huh." Then, as if realizing something, Tang Shan laughed loudly. "You're still young, but as a man you should understand. My daughter is one of the 3 treasures of the Central Plains." He realized Tang Shan had misunderstood and exclaimed, No, it's not like that." He clenched his fists, imagining the top 10 poisonous creatures Tang Shan mentioned, and asked loudly, "We seem the top 10 poisonous creatures of the Central Plains, as terrifying as the jade centipede," Tang Shan affirmed confidently. "Yes, of course." Tang Shan sneered, "The jade centipede is also very powerful, but it's still a low-level poisonous creature compared to the top 10 poisonous creatures of the Central Plains." Tang Shan described them from a centipede as big as a house to a golden-colored creature shining like gold. He was amazed imagining the creatures Tang Shan described, but Tang Shan said, "No matter what you imagine, the reality will exceed your expectations." Tang Shan sighed. "It's really an incredible story." Tang Shan observed Fabre's excited and delighted face, as well as the 2 larvae crawling inside his clothes, and concluded, "It seems we have convinced him successfully." 2 days later at the Taoist temple, Tang Shan's disciples heard the news and shouted, "They say the Blood Hand Devil, Tuo Yan Yang, has appeared." Tang Shan said, "We almost got into big trouble. It turns out he's been practicing martial arts in seclusion and has reached a level close to my father's." The disciples were frightened and stuttered. One disciple hesitated, then suddenly exclaimed, "Wait, did our master kill him? Has our master reached the realm of a myriad of poisons?" Another disciple chimed in, "Congratulations, master." Tang Shan sighed and denied it. "No, it wasn't like that." He continued, "The one who killed him was this young hero here." The disciples were surprised. "Is it really this young hero?" One of them turned to Fabre, grasped his hand, and exclaimed, "Isn't that right, young hero?" The disciples thanked Fabre. "Thank you, young hero, for saving our master's life." The leader of the Sichuan Tang clan seemed to be hinting at something. "You must be a young, ageless master." Fabre was taken aback by their words and asked, "Huh? What do you mean by young and ageless?" Tang Shan calmly interrupted. "The young hero seems to have some misunderstanding. Can you show us directly?" He thought for a moment, then agreed. "Okay, let's show you." The disciple, hiding from sight, peeked at the wriggling creature trying to emerge from under the boy's clothes. The small larvae cried out and looked around at the scene. The disciple saw the larvae clearly and was shocked, exclaiming, "Aren't these the larvae of the jade centipede? They're the ones who defeated Yunxiang." A disciple, upon seeing this scene, suddenly shouted, his voice laced with fear, "What kind of poisonous creatures are these? Are they safe?" Another disciple exclaimed, unable to hide his admiration, "Has the young master really tamed the jade centipede? Such talent at such a young age." Tang Shan spoke calmly. "So I've decided to accept this young master into our clan. He said he wants to think about it a bit more." The disciples cheered. "Oh, this is a great opportunity, young master." Tang Shan continued speaking, and his words drew the attention of the excited group. He clenched his fist and said seriously, "I think it's time we took action. We shouldn't delay any further." Faber asked the old man if there was anything else he wanted to find, but the old man just pondered, not responding immediately. Then he said gravely, "The Blood Hand Devil Yun Xiang." The martial art he practices is the Blood Hand Poisonous Technique, a terrifying evil art that uses human blood and marrow to enhance one's abilities. Faber was shocked, thinking, "What kind of crazy evil art is this?" The old man made a firm decision. If he has left behind any manuals or has disciples, we must deal with the aftermath. We can't let such a cruel evil art appear again in the martial world. A disciple asked, "But if there are people who have been captured, shouldn't we help them?" The other disciples agreed. "Of course, clan leader." Tang turned to Fabre and asked, "Can you help me with this? You're familiar with the terrain of South Island, aren't you?" Fabre fell silent, deep in thought. The larvae moved closer, making a faint noise. Fabre thought to himself, joining the Tang clan means a lifelong commitment. Normally, as an intern, one would observe the company atmosphere and get to know the boss's personality right. He agreed cheerfully. "I understand. When you're fully recovered, I'll do my best to help." The disciples cheered upon hearing this. Tang Shan praised the young master thinks correctly. Fabre smiled brightly. Helping others is a matter of course. While appearing humble on the surface, Fabre thought to himself, "On this trip, I must thoroughly investigate what the Tang clan is really like." He thought smugly talented individuals often conduct their own interviews. 3 days had passed since the old man had recovered. The group, including Tang Shan, Fabre, and the Tinyan disciples, had visited a village near the abandoned island to search for the whereabouts of the Blood Hand Devil, Yun Xiang. They inquired if anyone had gone missing. The villagers, looking worried, asked, "Are you talking about missing people?" An old man recalled, "In the past year, there have been 1 or 2 people who went missing in the forest, but not on a regular basis." Tang Shan stroked his beard thoughtfully. The group bowed in gratitude. Tang Shan spoke on behalf of the group. "Thank you for telling us, village head." The old man also bowed, responding warmly, "It's our honor to help the renowned Tang clan of Sichuan." Tang Shan said, "Then we'll take our leave. Village head, please be well." Unfortunately, the group didn't gather any more useful information and continued on their journey. Fabre wondered, "Isn't this village a bit too ordinary?" Tang Shan pondered. He thought for a moment before responding, "Judging by how he discovered us and revealed himself, I thought he would be lurking around here. It's not easy." Fabre also thought it was strange. Why didn't he leave any traces? Fabre recalled the time Yun Xiang attacked him and wondered what he had said. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he exclaimed. Fabre asked Senior, "Do you remember what he said when he appeared?" Tang Shan turned to him. "I don't remember clearly. What about you?" Fabre recalled the moment, thinking I was hit, and flew away. He continued. "He said that the Tang clan entered Hainan Island, right?" Tang Shan questioned. "Is that so?" Fabre analyzed further. "In other words, it means someone knew that the Tang clan had entered Hainan Island and informed Yun Xiang, right?" Tang Shan responded, "That's likely." Fabre proposed a solution cheerfully. "Then it's simple. We just need to verify that the Tang clan passed through Hainan Island. Based on our appearance, if we use a description to inquire, we'll find out." Tang Shan and the disciples looked at him in surprise. Tang Shan exclaimed in delight, "I didn't think of that. Well done. If the Blood Hand Devil Yun Xiang said that, it means he must have received information from someone who saw us." As Fabre felt a bit embarrassed by the praise, Tang Shan decided, "Then let's get moving." The group moved to a village, but it was shrouded in a heavy, gloomy atmosphere. The air was thick with an ominous feeling. As they entered the village, a disciple reported clan leader, "According to what we heard at the port on Hainan Island, this is likely the village we're looking for." Tang Shan assessed. "It seems to be the village where the women reside." Tang Shan ordered, "Let's go take a look." According to the young master's words, the women here might not be too hostile to us. The disciples responded in unison. "Yes, clan leader." The villagers inside were extremely depressed. Many were in a daze, and some were even lying in front of their homes. A villager was quietly sitting and working. Then said, "Is anyone here attracting the attention of the villagers?" When the villagers turned to look, they saw the group of people had entered the village. The villagers asked the Han people what they had come to the village for, and the young man was a bit surprised when he saw the village elder leading a little girl and 2 young men from the village. Tang Shan and his disciples greeted them with a bow, saying, "We are the masters of the Tang clan from Sichuan, and I am Tang Shan." The reason we came here is, while everyone was talking, Fabre quietly observed his surroundings. He secretly evaluated the village, thinking it lacked vitality, and the children seemed to be lacking energy. He suddenly thought of something and thought to himself, "Wait a minute." He wondered what was going on with these people. He looked around at the villagers who all seemed downcast and thought to himself, could it be that they were all drugged? The village elder said, "I don't know anything about the disappearances. I have nothing to do with it." He changed his expression and said, "Leave now." Tang Shan still tried to communicate, but the old man shouted, "This is not something you need to concern yourself with. Leave now." Both Tang Shan and Fabre were taken aback by the old man's attitude. Tang Shan turned to Fabre and whispered, "I was told the villagers here were very friendly, but..." The little girl the village elder was holding hands with suddenly fell down. The old village elder panicked and shouted, "Did she fall down?" The old man was so anxious that he burst into tears. "Oh, Ma. Jen, no, you can't. You're the only family I have left," the old man said in anguish. "Why did you have to suffer from this strange illness too?" Tang Shan knelt down on one knee before the old man and offered, "Sir, I have some knowledge of medicine. Perhaps I can help," the old man asked back. "The medicine from the Central Plains?" Tang Shan replied, "Yes. Although I'm not a doctor, I have some understanding of medicine. Let me take a look at the child's condition, okay?" The old man hastily agreed. "Please, I'm counting on you." The old man began to explain. Actually, starting from a while back, a strange illness began to appear in the village. The children died one after another, and the adults also fell ill and became weak. Tang Shan placed his hand on the old man's shoulder to comfort him. "Let's take a look, okay?" The old man let out a sigh of relief and said, "Thank you. Thank you very much." The old man said to them, "Please come inside," and then shouted to the villagers, "What are you waiting for? Quickly bring the doctor and his group inside." The group quickly ran inside. Fabre asked while running, "Does the senior brother also know medicine?" Tang Shan replied, "Yes, that's right. The martial arts of the Tang clan involve dealing with poison, so we're also quite knowledgeable about medicine. Moreover, martial arts start with understanding the body, so we need to have some knowledge of medicine." Fabre thought to himself, "I thought you were just an assassination group that used poison. If I join the Tang clan from Sichuan, not only will I learn the powerful and unique martial arts, but also medicine, which won't be bad." One of the disciples said with a hint of cruelty, "Of course, sometimes we test the reaction of our captives by injecting them with poison." Fabre was shocked and thought to himself, "You actually experiment on people." Fabre thought that Tang Shan and his disciples were cruel and ruthless. And he thought to himself, "They're indeed very scary people." The sky was still gloomy. The first rays of sunlight shone down. In a house, Ma Zhen was lying still, but her whole body was emitting a green aura, and she was frowning, her eyes tightly closed. Tang Shan briefly explained to the old village elder, "First, I've transmitted my internal energy into her body to prevent her breathing from stopping." The old man replied, "Oh, thank you, sir." The old man stroked Ma Zhen's head and said sorrowfully, "She's the only family I have left. Please save her, sir." Tang Shan asked, "The unstable pulse is quite strange. Was the child's heart weak from birth?" The old man replied, "It was only half a year ago that her condition started to worsen. Not just my granddaughter, many others began to fall ill and become weak." The old man explained, "We call it a strange illness. That's why I asked you to leave just now." Fabre understood and exclaimed, "So that's it?" Tang Shan requested, "Sir, first I'll prescribe a good medicine for the heart. Please gather all the villagers so we can try the medicine and see." The old man was moved to tears and sobbed, thank you, sir." The old man thanked him again, and Fabre quietly observed Tang Shan's gentle smile. Night fell, and a disciple called out softly. The disciple said, "You've worked hard to examine the patient, sir." Tang Shan replied, "Thank you, Jubai." Jubai asked about the condition of the patients, and Tang Shan thought for a moment before saying, "This is indeed a strange case." He analyzed the symptoms of weakness, swelling around the eyes, unstable pulse, and mild fever. All the symptoms were different, but those who were seriously ill all had heart problems. He suddenly remembered and asked, "By the way, how is the young master Jubai reported?" The young master was tired after helping everyone, so he fell asleep. I've had him rest in his room. Tang Shan thought about his disciples carrying Fabre to rest, and the disciple sighed. "The young master has worked hard," Tang Shan said. "His body hasn't been trained in martial arts, so it's easy for him to get tired." He said, "Let's go check on the young master's condition." Jubai replied, "I'll lead the way, sir." The door to the room opened quietly. Inside, Fabre was fast asleep, unaware of anything. Tang Shan didn't enter, he just quietly observed from outside. He suddenly pushed the door open and entered, quickly walked to his bedside, and swung his hand towards Fabre. His hand descended as fast as lightning and accurately slapped Fabre on the cheek, causing Fabre to cry out in pain, waking up suddenly looking at Tang Shan in confusion and saying "Senior." While looking at Tang Shan with great anger, Fabre felt puzzled in his heart. Why Tang Shan suddenly slapped him, leaving Fabre bewildered. Fabre sat up, holding his cheek that had just been slapped. Fabre said. He held his face and leaned against the wall, wondering what was happening. "Oh, Senior, it hurts so much." Tang Shan quickly crawled over, reaching out his hand and saying, "Sorry, I just meant to catch the bug crawling on your face." Fabre's face froze, asking, "What bug? Why did you slap me, Senior?" Tang Shan stuttered. Tang Shan looked through the crack in the door, saying, "I just meant to drop by and visit the young hero before resting." Suddenly, Tang Shan saw a bug. "You know, a bug suddenly flew onto your face." He raised his hand, his eyes sharp, saying, "There are many venomous insects on Hainan Island. It's quite dangerous, so I slapped you without thinking." Tang Shan showed Fabre the bug that had been slapped on his hand, saying, "Look, this bug is quite big." Fabre looked at the bug on Tang Shan's hand stunned, and suddenly exclaimed, "Wait a minute. How did this bug get here?" It seemed like Fabre had discovered something. Fabre asked Senior, "The patients all have different symptoms, but they all have something abnormal in common, right?" Tang Shan replied, "Yes, that's right. You said the cause of these strange illnesses spreading in the village." Fabre pointed to the bug on Tang Shan's hand, saying, "It's because of this bug." Tang Shan was surprised. "What?" "This is a type of bug from the mosquito family, it's called. That because it usually sucks the blood of people's eyes or lips while they're sleeping. This type is quick and sneaky, sucking blood faster than mosquitoes, so it's also called a vampire or assassin bug." Fabre took a cloth to wipe away the spot where the bug had landed, saying, "This bug itself is not venomous, but its belly is full of harmful parasites. So when it bites, people get infected through its waste." Trypanosoma, also known as Chagas disease, is the disease it causes. It's a dangerous disease, ranked 7th among the most deadly parasites to humans. Fabre asked the village elder, "I wonder if the dogs in the village have been panting or showing similar symptoms." The village elder panicked. "Yes, that's right. Could it be because of this bug?" Fabre sighed. "Yes, it's likely." The village elder looked worried, asking, "If so, can my granddaughter be saved?" Fabre replied, "If we have the medicine, it's still possible, but..." Tang Shan laughed loudly. "Jubai, what do you think of this young hero now?" Jubai smiled. "Indeed, we've seen the value of this young hero." He entered without understanding the situation, muttering, "Why are these people like this?" Tang Shan said, "Young hero, join our Tang clan in Sichuan." Fabre was taken aback. "Yes." Tang Shan confidently said, "My idea is for you to join our Tang clan in Sichuan." Tang Shan explained there's a type called goo worm, also known as goo poison or ancient poison. This worm is nurtured by evil people in the Central Plains. Tang Shan continued, those wicked people make people swallow this worm, periodically causing pain or controlling people at their will. Fabre was shocked. Controlling people. That's terrifying. Tang Shan said, although it's powerful, many people in the martial world have lost their lives because of this goo. He said people have killed their own children and then taken their own lives, or betrayed their families and clans to become slaves to the evil people. Tang Shan said, for a long time, people in the martial world have been trying to create an antidote for this goo, an antidote that can expel the goo from the body or make it disappear. Tang Shan suddenly pulled out something from his clothes. If the martial world can create such an antidote, where would they make it? He took out a round pill, saying proudly, of course it's our Tang clan in Sichuan. We have a medicine that can dissolve even a lump as big as a fist in the body. So what's a few tiny parasites? Tang Shan showed the large shining pill. This is Wu Gu Dan. Just a little of this pill is enough. Looking at the village elder with tears in his eyes, Tang Shan said, so don't worry, elder. Tang Shan said, your granddaughter can be saved. As a result, starting with the village elder's granddaughter, the villagers gradually recovered their health. The village elder hugged his granddaughter, overjoyed. Oh Ma Jen, thank goodness it's a miracle. The warm welcome from the villagers was an added reward. Seeing their bright faces, it seemed that the information about the optimistic nature of the female tribe was correct. Tang Shan patted Fabre's shoulder, saying if the young hero hadn't found the cause, it would have been difficult. So the benefactor is not me, but this young hero. The young people in the village thanked Fabre in unison. Thank you, young hero, thank you very much. Fabre felt embarrassed, and the people around him shouted, the young hero is the benefactor of our village. Although Tang Shan had cured everyone with the Tang clan's medicine, he gave all the credit to me. Watching me being appreciated by everyone, he looked happy as if it was his own achievement. It was a little touching. The young people in the village surrounded him and threw him up in the air to commend him. A while later, the village elder whispered to Tang Shan that the person who had spoken at the village gate had mentioned something, and he was curious about what it was. The elder said that everyone was looking for the village where people had gone missing, and Tang Shan replied, that was correct, but wondered why the elder was asking. The village elder looked worried and said he wanted to repay a debt of gratitude, so he had made some queries and heard a strange story. Everyone fell silent listening to the elder say that in their village there was a girl who had married from another village. Her parents' village had experienced strange occurrences a few years ago, with people disappearing one by one. Tang Shan was shocked when he heard this and looked around muttering that there was a lead. Tang Shan asked where that place was, and the village elder replied that it was a small village to the west. When they arrived, they only saw a desolate scene. Tang Shan covered his nose with his hand and said there was a smell of corpses, and his attendant agreed that it seemed to be the case. He seemed to have seen something terrifying and exclaimed, what is this? There were piles of corpses and skeletons, and Tang Shan said, it's chilling. There are also poisonous corpses. The poison is generated after the corpses decompose. A disciple shouted, don't let the young master see this scene. But Fabre said he had already seen everything. Suddenly, the young man discovered something and wondered what was on the other side. Sharp claws appeared. A beak picked up a severed snake head. A bird with strange feathers was swallowing the snake head. The young man muttered, a bird, and then picked up a stone, saying, that bird can't be allowed to desecrate the dead further. The young man threw the stone at the bird, shouting, get out of here! Tang Shan shouted. Wait! The stone flew past and startled the bird. It slammed its claws onto the ground. Its eyes were full of killing intent, and it prepared to attack. The young man shouted angrily, you damn thing! But Tang Shan patted him on the shoulder to calm him down, saying, stop, something's not right. The bird spread its large wings, flapped them powerfully, and took off into the air with a killing aura. Fabre was frightened by the scene. The skeletons that were hit by the black smoke were melting. He muttered, isn't that? It's melting. A hand covered his mouth. Tang Shan shouted loudly, everyone get away! That's Chen Niao! Everyone sat down in a circle. Tang Shan explained, When it spreads its wings, it can fly to a place far away, like 5 light years. Its beak is as bright as copper sharp like a spearhead. Its whole body is covered with dark purple feathers, dense and shiny like the night sky. The 2 attendants listened seriously, and Tang Shan continued. When it's angry, it spreads its wings, and everything around it turns black and dies, turning into poison. Tang Shan continued. On its head is a golden crown, majestic and dignified, worthy of being called the Overlord. People call this kind of bird Chen Niao. Faber said, "Could it be?" he exclaimed excitedly. "Is it one of the 10 great poisonous creatures?" Tang Shan nodded. His eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, "It's the one that stands at the top of the 10 great poisonous creatures known as the King of all animals. Chen Niao. The king of the 10 great poisonous creatures," he muttered. "It's so terrifying, so powerful. Compared to it, the poisonous insects and snakes on Earth are just cute." Fabre was overjoyed when he saw Chen Niao saying it was a biological weapon flying around. Tang Shan said it seemed to be attracted by the swarm of snakes and flew here automatically. The 3 others whispered that Chen Niao only eats the heads of the most poisonous snakes. Fabre asked worriedly if this was an omen, and Tang Shan replied that it certainly was. He added that it was rare to see Chen Niao in a lifetime, and it had been 100 years since someone had seen one. Fabre was amazed, and Tang Shan wondered, "What's wrong? Young master, are you planning to catch it? Making everyone surprised?" Tang Shan laughed and said, "You want to try to catch it?" Young Master Fabre replied, "Yes, but its poison is so potent." Tang Shan just smiled at him and suddenly said, "Little one, you seem very interested in the 10 great poisonous creatures. In that case, there is a way." Fabre was surprised and asked, "Really?" Tang Shan said, "If you practice the Tang clan's poison technique, your body will become immune to all poisons and can resist Chen Niao's poison." He added that only the Tang clan's martial arts could counteract that poison. Tang Shan pointed to his face and said, "But alas, the Tang clan doesn't teach our family secrets to outsiders." He continued, "Even if I want to help you, young master, I can't break the clan's rules as the clan leader." Fabre exclaimed eagerly, "If I become a member of the Tang clan, can I learn it? And if I reach the level of being immune to all poisons, can I really resist Chen Niao's poison?" Tang Shan said confidently, "Of course. If you decide to join now, I won't hesitate to teach you everything, and the initiation ceremony will be properly arranged." Looking at the faces of the others, no one believed what he said. Only Fabre believed him. He smiled cunningly and said, "But if the young master hesitates for too long, we will also have to think carefully, won't we?" Fabre's face turned red with excitement. Fabre said firmly, "I agree to become a member of the Tang clan. I hope you can teach me clan leader." Tang Shan laughed loudly and said, "Good, good." He patted Fabre's shoulder and said, "From now on, you will be a member of the Tang clan forever." The residents of Yunxiang, one of the 10 great poisonous creatures, footprints next to poisonous substances. Suddenly, someone called out clan leader. A young woman pointed to a book and said it was inside the cave. Tang Shan held the book in his hand, opened it page by page, and said, "The characters written in blood are, indeed, the secret manual of the Blood Hand Poison Master." Fabre exclaimed in surprise. "Writing characters with blood?" he asked curiously. "Are you going to Sichuan, sir?" Tang Shan replied, "We have to. We've already obtained the core of the jade centipede and the secret manual." Fabre remembered the animals he had raised and asked, "Can we stop by the Taoist temple for a moment? Want to release my friends." "All right, we'll prepare your luggage," Tang Shan said as he turned to leave. "Let's set off then." Fabre kept looking back, and suddenly he discovered something. Fabre pointed to the cave and said, "There's something over there." The young disciple asked, "What do you mean?" Everyone gathered around, crouched down to take a look. The short-haired young man asked, "What's this?" They all exclaimed, "This is a feather of Chen Niao." Everyone looked at the feather, which was emitting a purple glow. Tangshan put on gloves and picked up the feather to examine it. He opened a box to store it, saying, "Consider this a gift to welcome you to the Tang clan." He seemed very interested in it. Fabre exclaimed, "Thank you, elder. I mean, clan leader." Tangshan turned around, smiled, and said, "Everything is fine, but I don't like this form of address." He continued, "Let's change it after the ritual of becoming sworn brothers." Okay? Is the ritual similar to the initiation ceremony? At the same time, at the Tang clan's Sichuan branch, Tang Jun was injured. The members of the Tang clan supported him, saying, "Greetings, Supreme Clan Leader." The old man shouted loudly, "Hurry up! How is Yinny's condition?" The subordinate supporting Tang Jun replied, "She is still alive, sir." The old man said, "Let's go to Yinny's place quickly." The door to the room opened. Tang Jun appeared and called out loudly, "Yinny!" The people around the bed exclaimed, "Greetings, Supreme Clan Leader." Madame Tang looked worried and called out, "Father." The old man replied, "My daughter-in-law, I've brought the medicine." Tang Jun took out a pill and said, "This is the core of the jade centipede." Madame Tang covered her mouth, trying to hold back her emotions, and said, "You've succeeded." Everyone sat down waiting for the old man to give Yinny the medicine. Yinny's complexion was very poor, and she was gasping for breath. Tang Jun looked at her with compassion and called out, "Yinny." The old man held the core of the jade centipede and said it was a close call. Fortunately, I arrived in time. Madame Tang said, "Father, please give her the medicine." The old man slowly fed Yinny the pill. A green aura emanated from her body. Tangun took her pulse. Then he used his internal energy. Madame Tang looked at her daughter with concern and muttered to herself, "Wake up, Yinny." Fabre sat in the back, looking dazed, and said, "I've heard that the Central Plains are vast, but I didn't expect them to be so enormous." They traveled from Hainan by boat to Hangzhou, and after passing through Nanning, they completed their long journey of 1.5 months. Finally, they arrived in Sichuan, in front of the Tang clan's headquarters. Jubai smiled and said, "This is the Tang clan in Sichuan, young hero," Fabre exclaimed in surprise. "Is this it?" Before them lay the vast Tang clan. He said, "This entire mountain belongs to the Tang clan in Sichuan, so it's called Tang Clan Mountain." But Fabre couldn't believe his eyes. The members of the Tang clan rushed out shouting, "The clan leader is back! Welcome back, clan leader!" It made Fabre panic, and he muttered to himself, "Are all these people members of the Tang clan in Sichuan? They're so numerous and terrifying." Behind the crowd of men, a girl in red clothing also ran towards them, the footsteps of those who came to welcome them back. Tangshan was surprised to hear the two words, "Father." His beloved daughter had woken up, and she cried out as she ran towards him. Fabre was immediately captivated by Yinny's beauty as soon as he met her. Tangshan was overjoyed and called out loudly, "Yinny, you're awake!" She hugged him tightly and said, "Father, I'm sorry." Yinny asked, "How's my body?" He looked at her and muttered to himself, "Good heavens, is this beauty real? In my past life, I worked with celebrities, but this is too beautiful." Fabre looked at her beautiful face and said, "This is the first time I've seen someone who radiates such aura." Tangshan turned to her and said, "I have someone I want to introduce to you." Tangshan said, "Fabre, this is my daughter Tang Yinny." Fabre's face froze. Tangshan continued, I remember you mentioned something about the scent of grass." Yinny heard those words and felt puzzled grass. Tangshan stroked her head and said, "You mean wild grass?" It made Yinny startled and blush. The two of them looked at each other in silence. He remembered that Tang Shan had said his daughter was one of the 3 treasures of the Central Plains. Fabre denied it. No, it's not just some wild grass." He felt a bit embarrassed. The unique flower Tang Yinny was the only female member of the Tang clan. From a young age, she had borne deep sorrow that was hard to understand. 2 old seniors were talking to each other. One said, "Her talent is still unclear." The other replied, "Isn't her appearance outstanding enough to be praised as one of the 3 beauties of the martial world?" She hid behind a tree, listening to their comments. One of them said, just find a nominal son-in-law to make it look good. The other said, we've been told to take more concubines, but I don't understand why the clan leader opposes it. Yinny endured the harsh words and muttering, not because her parents were wrong. Yinny wanted to prove to the elders in the family that she had the ability, with the determination that even though she was not a boy, she could still do many things for the family. Having the saying being too hasty will only lead to going astray. That impatience has created a demonic mind, and that demonic mind has turned into an obstacle to entering the demonic realm. After she regained consciousness thanks to the medicine and Tang Jun's help, everyone sat around looking worried. Madame Tang said joyfully, "Child, you've survived Yinny." Yinny said, "Mother, what should I do?" Tears kept flowing out. Yinny cried out loud. "I'm sorry, Mother," she thought to herself. "It's all over. I once wanted to become someone useful to the family." Yinny looked at Tang Jun and said, "I've lost all my internal energy." He held her hand and said, "You little girl." Tang Jun smiled and said, "Are you feeling guilty for having made your father and the Tang clan suffer? You've achieved the state of being poison-resistant that you've always wanted. Stop crying and be happy." She looked puzzled and asked, "What about being poison-resistant?" Yinny raised her hand and saw a faint green glow on it. The energy emanating from it was so strong that she was shocked. Yinny turned to ask him, "What is this, grandfather?" Tang Jun said happily, "Before this, I had something to tell you, Yinny. Not only did I save your life, but I also helped you reach a higher level of internal energy, surpassing the state of being poison-resistant." "It's about a mysterious young hero?" Yinny asked curiously. "A weed." Everyone laughed and teased, while Xiao Long looked embarrassed. He muttered to himself, "To be so infatuated with the top 10 poisonous assassins and dare to consider the young lady of a great clan as a weed." Tang Shan stood behind, smiling smugly at his embarrassment. Fabre thought to himself, "I should reflect on my past." He forced a smile and said, "The clan leader is really joking. It's an honor to meet you, young lady. I am Fabre." Fabre said, "I heard you were once ill, but now you seem healthy, which is fortunate." Yinny hesitated and replied, "Yes," then said cheerfully, "It's an honor to meet you." Yinny introduced herself. "I am Du, Hua Yinny. I would like to express my gratitude for your life-saving kindness. Young hero, I will never forget this kindness in my life." Yinny's introduction made Fabre dazed, and he muttered to himself, "So beautiful." The old man spoke up. "What do you think?" He was startled and muttered, "What's going on? Why is there a voice in my head?" Tangshan said, "This is called telepathy." Continuing the telepathy. "Even if you're just a weed, you're still beautiful, aren't you? Do you want to pick a lycoris flower?" Fabre heard this and felt embarrassed, his face turning red. The scene changed to a bathroom where he was lying in a hot bath relaxing. The little jade centipedes were sleeping soundly in a basin. Fabre enjoyed himself and said, "I'm going to die." He turned to look and saw that one of the jade centipedes was awake. He muttered, "Usually they don't cling to me all day. Hot water isn't good for your bodies. Do you want to come into the tub for a while?" As soon as he finished speaking, it crawled in as if it understood. "Looking at these cute creatures," Fabre said. "They're really strange. It seems they can understand some of what I say." Following Tangshan's words, it reacted to the murderous aura. He saw the little creatures looking at him and smiled. Staring at someone's naked body will make them embarrassed. Suddenly they panicked and scurried down into the tub to hide. He smiled and muttered, "These little guys are really—" Fabre turned around and said, "Old Ju Bai once said that jade centipedes are spiritual creatures. We should understand what spiritual creatures are before making judgments." He suddenly realized something, remembering Tangshan's words. "The lycoris flower is really beautiful. Do you want to pick one here?" To himself. Tangshan's words kept echoing in my mind, making me unable to calm down. I need to leave this place quickly. The scene shifted to the Tang clan. Everyone was sitting in a room seemingly discussing something. Tangshan held a cup of tea and said, "So we'll make the necessary arrangements, right?" Tang Jun asked a young hero with such talent. He replied, "Yes, We thought we had encountered a good opportunity. But it wasn't just because of the young hero's help. Tang continued. This person's knowledge of poisonous creatures is extraordinary. Not to mention, he can even write Yun Xiang and has encountered legendary spiritual creatures like the Chen Niao, to the surprise of Madame Tang and Yini. He said I heard that the young hero even hatched jade centipede eggs with his own hands. We really missed out on a treasure, Tang Shan replied. Yes, father. She was startled and didn't understand. Tang Shan asked, Do you want to accept this young hero as your son-in-law? What do you think? Yini wondered. You mean you want Fabre to be your son-in-law? She said, If he's to be my husband. Yini exclaimed loudly, making Madame Tang look on with concern. Then she lowered her head and remained silent, waiting for an answer. Yini muttered to herself, Now that I've surpassed the state of being poison-resistant and entered the Seis, realm of heavenly poison, I want to prove that I can be more helpful to the family. She spoke up, I am also a member of the Tang clan. I understand what you mean, father. Yini slammed her hand on the table and spoke loudly, but with tears welling up, she said, Whether that young hero is worthy of me or not, I must verify it myself. After speaking, Yini ran out. The people inside looked at each other with concern. Tang Shan had a bad feeling and muttered, Be careful, young hero. Looking at his daughter's departing figure, he said, The licorice flower is beautiful, but it also has sharp thorns. Yini ran and muttered to herself, Now that I can aim for the heavenly poison body, if I stop here, I won't be recognized by the elders in the family. I will carefully investigate his character from the beginning to the end. After soaking in the bath, Fabre sat outside, enjoying the breeze. He wondered to himself, what's going on? Fabre muttered to himself, It seems I just made a bad impression on the young lady from the noble family. The Jade Centipede kids didn't understand what he said. Fabre rubbed the Jade Centipede's head and asked in return, What should we do? Suddenly Yini appeared from behind, calling out to the young hero, startling him into a loud cry. She was out of breath from running. Fabre asked curiously, Yini, young lady, she said. Excuse me for a moment, I'm in a bit of a hurry. Seeing his bewildered expression, Yini asked, May I borrow your hand for a moment? Fabre extended his hand and said, Yes, young lady. Suddenly he thought of something, his face turned red, and he stuttered. Fabre looked embarrassed and said, I don't know what you're doing, but maybe we should discuss this when we're more familiar, he stuttered. Well, it's just a procedure. The girl furrowed her brow and asked, What do you mean? Yini suddenly thought of something and her face turned red. Her face as red as a tomato. She exclaimed loudly, No, that's not it. What are you talking about? Fabre's face showed helplessness as he muttered, That's not it. The romantic sunset scene was not reflected on the two individuals. Yini let out a sigh. She said, It's not what you think. I just wanted to check your pulse. Maybe because I asked you to give me your hand suddenly, you misunderstood. Fabre smiled wryly and said, So that's what it was. I didn't understand. Yini sat down and said, First, I want to apologize for appearing so abruptly and behaving rudely. She turned to him and said, You look very young, not yet an adult, but you seem like a thoughtful person, so I'll explain what's going on. Fabre stuttered in response. After listening to Yini's explanation for a while, what he heard sounded like the plot of a typical historical drama. As the direct descendant, she had been subjected to sinister plots from other families. To ensure the continuation of her family line, the elders had decided to find a worthy son-in-law. She even considered how his position in the family would change if he joined. Yini said, So I want to apologize in advance, but there's something I need to confirm with you. She scratched her head and said, Even if things don't go as planned, we won't mistreat you. You're our benefactor, so we'll treat you like an honored guest. Yini had other ideas. How about we become sworn siblings instead? She was surprised when Fabre extended his hand towards her. He smiled and said, I understand what you mean. Go ahead and confirm whatever you need to. Yini silently looked at him. Then she took his pulse and said, All right, let's begin. Around her, a stream of energy was generated, astonishing Fabre. Yini said, The martial arts of the Tang clan are not something everyone can master. Some people can absorb poison into their bodies and grasp the clan's ultimate techniques. Yinny explained that the clan's poison techniques required a person to gradually adapt to various poisons as their internal energy increased. She said that one must be able to accept all of this to reach the pinnacle. After finishing taking Fabre's pulse, Yinny said, "Fortunately, your body can learn the poison techniques, but..." She turned to him and said, "It's just that you have a 10 poison constitution, meaning your body can only withstand 10 types of poison. For someone not from the Tang clan, having a 10 poison constitution was already impressive." But Fabre looked dazed upon hearing this. Yinny stood up and said, "In terms of overall strength, you can be considered a first-rate martial artist, at most. That's the highest level someone without innate talent can achieve." She turned around and bowed, saying, "Sorry, I have to go now." Fabre stood up and replied, "Take care." Fabre looked gloomy as he saw her off. Yinny didn't seem particularly happy either. He muttered to himself, "I have a 10 poison constitution." "Like a bolt out of the blue," Fabre exclaimed. "That means I won't be able to catch Chen Niao." This was a serious issue for him. Slender Legs stepped out of the bathtub. Yinny wrapped herself in a cloth and breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at her body and said, "Since I absorbed the jade centipede's core, my body has been emitting this strange fragrance. I've even taken a few baths a day." Yinny put on her clothes and said, "Is this because I spoke ungratefully to my benefactor? So I'm being punished." The scene shifted to Fabre's bedroom, where he was now fast asleep. As he slept, it seemed he was dreaming of something. Suddenly, Fabre appeared somewhere with many cherry blossom trees. He heard someone crying and saying, "I'm so grateful for your kindness." He was being thanked by Miss Yinny, the benefactor. He muttered to himself, "Am I dreaming?" Some girl said, "No, it's not a dream." He felt like it was just a dream, but it wasn't. The jade centipede knelt on the ground and said, "I borrowed the appearance of this girl who swallowed my core to avoid frightening you. I am the mother of those children." Fabre wondered, "Are these children under your feet the cute ones in human form?" Fabre exclaimed in shock. "You scared me. When did they arrive here?" Fabre looked at the children and muttered, "Are these children hers? Are they all girls?" She hesitated. "But how did everyone appear in my dream?" Ed Centipede, still silent, spoke up. "I was brutally killed, leaving behind my children. My vengeance reaches the heavens, and my spirit remains in the core." She angrily said, "When I cursed while being inside the girl who absorbed my core, the opportunity to resolve my grievance arose, allowing me to appear in your dream." Jade Centipede said gratefully, "Thanks to you, my children are with me." Benefactor, after hearing her explanation, Fabre replied, "I understand." He muttered, realizing he was the one who revealed her location. With a worried expression, Fabre said, "I didn't mean to, but I'm still related to Jade Centipede's death." Looking at her face with some pity, Jade Centipede said, "Benefactor, if it's not too much trouble, can you fulfill one wish of mine?" Fabre, holding a sleeping child, assured, "Of course I'll fulfill any wish of yours." She stroked her child's head. "Can you take care of my children until they grow up?" He wondered, don't centipedes become independent after molting twice from their mother's body? Jade Centipede said, "For lower creatures, that's true, but we're different." She comforted her children. Before our young molt twice, they're heavily dependent on the core energy from their mother. Later they'll develop by absorbing the vital energy from other living beings. Fabre asked, "Wait, Miss Yinny has absorbed the internal energy. Does that mean they'll have to stay close to her?" She said seriously. "You need to understand our situation, Benefactor," Jade Centipede asked. "Didn't I just say I cursed that girl?" You sweated and replied, "That's right." She said, "Because of my core, her body emits a foul odor." Fabre was shocked. A foul odor. With a sinister expression, Jade Centipede said, "I won't let any man near her and she won't be able to have children." Fabre exclaimed, "Oh my God!" She said, "To lift the curse, let my children absorb energy from the core. You can also take this opportunity to win her heart." Fabre thought for a moment, then smiled and replied, "I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to take advantage of Miss Yinny's difficult situation." Jade Centipede admired. "You're truly a respectable person, benefactor," she asked, "but how do you plan to overcome this challenge? It seems the girl is looking for a powerful man." Jade Centipede said, "I can't give you the core of the top 10 poisonous beings. My core has been absorbed by that girl," Fabre muttered. "Top 10 poisonous beings," he said cheerfully. "I have an idea. Can you trust me?" She wondered. "What's your idea?" Fabre stroked the little golden one's head. "Leave this to me. I think it'll work out." The next day, after hearing Fabre's story, Yini said, "So the smell from my body is because of Jade Centipede's core." He, carrying her children, replied, "Yes, and if you let these centipedes absorb energy from the core, every few days the smell will disappear." She blushed. "I'm a bit embarrassed to ask, but..." Yini asked, "You helped me without asking for anything in return. Can you ask for something in compensation?" "I couldn't bear to take advantage of a woman's difficult situation. I don't want to be shameless." She was surprised by his response. Yini lowered her head and was silent for a moment. She said, "All right, I won't just accept your kindness without giving anything back." Yini said seriously, "I'll seriously consider my father's words. Seeing you, Fabre, made me realize that there are things more important than talent or martial arts." Fabre scratched his head, embarrassed. "I was thinking about it too." She asked, "What were you thinking?" He smiled awkwardly. "You have the 10 poison constitution and can absorb the 10 types of poison, right?" Yini sighed. "That's right." Fabre looked at the children. "So I was thinking if I can only receive the 10 types of poison." He smiled. "Can I absorb the poison of the 10 great poisonous assassins in the Central Plains?" Yini wondered, using the poison of the 10 great poisonous assassins. She blushed, thinking, "He wants to become the strongest in the world for me." Yini thought shyly. How could he? For Tang Yini, a flower of the martial world, this was the first time a man had made such a bold confession to her. The sky seemed gloomy, but the sun's rays still managed to seep through the thick clouds and shine down on the resting pavilion outside, where 2 people were sitting on the steps discussing something. Yini looked puzzled, gazing at Fabre with a questioning expression, wondering if he knew what he was talking about. He met Yini's gaze, remained silent for a moment, then scratched his head and burst out laughing, saying he didn't know. Yini was also left speechless by his carefree response. Straightening up and placing her hands on her chest, Tang Yini confided that the path ahead would be incredibly challenging and arduous, potentially taking 10-20 years or even a lifetime to pursue. Fabre, sitting beside her, looked dazed, his mind racing with the gravity of the situation. Suddenly a thought struck him, and his entire face flushed with heat. Covering her face with both hands, Tang Yini let out a soft hum, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. After composing herself, she hinted that Fabre, who was said to be only 10 years old, still had 3 years to mature and be eligible for marriage. He sat there dazed as Tang Yini spoke about his future, her voice filled with the shy tone of a young girl. In those 3 years, if he succeeded in mastering one of the top 10 poisonous creatures, he would likely gain absolute trust from everyone. Therefore, if he succeeded, the likelihood of achieving his goal was very high. Tapping her index fingers together, she spoke with a flushed face, her words implying that the matter of marriage. Suddenly, Tang Yini stood up, shouting loudly that she would wholeheartedly support him, leaving Fabre, who was sitting beside her, startled and recoiling to one side. After speaking, she didn't look back and ran off, leaving behind only a phrase, "I'm going," while Fabre was still sitting there bewildered and managed to utter a faint, "Huh?" Then he hastily called it out to her retreating figure, asking if there was something else he hadn't said. Tang Yini turned back, looking startled, and asked if he still had something on his mind. On the other side, Fabre wore an innocent smile, patting the spot beside him, and said it was about needing treatment. Even if it was just for a short while, she should try to stay. Her entire body stiffened. She clenched her fists and took slow steps back to her original position, her head about to burst with heat due to embarrassment. Fabre thought she was afraid of the small worms on his body and hastened to reassure her that they wouldn't bite. He then turned to look at the worms on his hand, calling out to them, and the worms responded by wriggling. He translated their responses, making Tang Yini, who was beside him, jump in surprise, and she didn't dare to disobey her father again, wondering if she should go talk to her mother. Mostly filled with joy and delight, he repeated a few key words, father and mother. Upon hearing this, Faber panicked and hastily denied it, his voice rising in protest. In the study, the three parents sat facing each other, their demeanor turning serious as they discussed the matter. It seemed that Fabre's talent had not yet moved their daughter's heart. Tang Jun asked Madame Tang sternly if she had noticed anything unusual between the two that morning. Madame Tang, holding a teacup, replied that it seemed Fabre had been rejected by Tang Yini. Upon hearing this, Tang Jun fell into deep thought, stroking his silver beard, and said, "All right." Tang Jun cleared his throat, regaining his composure, and suggested that forcing the marriage might not be appropriate. It would be better to let the feelings between the two develop naturally. Madame Tang, upon hearing this, came up with an idea, looking at her husband and suggesting that they ask Tang Yini to guide Fabre in martial arts, allowing them to meet frequently. Perhaps this would foster feelings between them. Tang Jun's eyes lit up, and he agreed that it was not a bad idea. Then, I'll ask Yi Xian to see if he can grant the Zishi Mao Xianrong favor. If there's a chance, it might help bring them closer. Tang Shan, on the other side, reminded cautiously that Tang Yini wasn't very interested in the matter, so they shouldn't expect too much. Tang Jun folded his arms, let out a cold hum, and closed his eyes, showing indifference. Tang Shan could only agree reluctantly. "Father, your daughter Tang Yini comes to pay her respects," she called out from outside. The three people in the room were startled, wondering why Tang Yini had come at this hour. Tang Shan regained his composure and called out, "Come in." Without hesitation, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. Seeing the three parents sitting there with serious expressions, she felt taken aback, choking on her own saliva. Tang Yini stumbled backward, stuttering as the three others stared at her, unsure of what she meant. Tang Yini stood up straight, clasped her hands together, and respectfully said she had come to discuss something. Tang Shan was taken aback, asking what she wanted to talk about. Thinking about what she was about to say, she felt a bit embarrassed, her face turning red, and her throat constricting. She stuttered for a moment. I'll follow father's instructions," she said, gripping her clothes tightly to gather courage, and spoke in one breath. He let out a surprised sound, his face stiffening as he struggled to process the information. Later, Tang Shan hesitated and asked again what the words meant. Madame Tang happily pulled her daughter closer and listened as Tang Yini stuttered, unable to finish a sentence, so Madame Tang impatiently added, "Has the young Master Fabre caught your eye?" She froze silent, her face changing color like a chameleon. Just as it had calmed down a bit, it showed signs of turning red again in the joy of the two parents. Why was it so sudden? Clearly the daughter had said she wasn't interested before. Her father was too straightforward, leaving Tang Yini speechless at the moment. She tapped her index fingers together, showing her fluctuating mood, and only dared to speak after a while. "Young Master Fabre, because the young master has vowed to become the #1 under heaven." The person who made such a vow, her words excited the two parents extremely. They asked again, "What do you mean by #1 under heaven?" The old man stroked his short beard, interested, and said, "Tell us more about that." According to her father's wishes, Tang Yini honestly told them that even though her innate talent was only of the 10th rank poisonous body, for my sake the young master has sworn to master all 10 types of poison to become the 10 great poisonous objects. He has promised me. The Tang clan leader laughed heartily. The words were a bit harsh, but more out of pride. The 10 great poisonous objects. That young lad is indeed arrogant, not knowing the height of the sky or the depth of the earth. Her mother also chimed in, teasing, "Oh my, is there really such a person in this world?" This made her head feel hot and flushed like a boiled shrimp. A moment later, she regained her composure and explained, Although I have agreed in my heart before young Master Fabre matures, if he can control one of the 10 great poisonous objects, our wedding will be accepted. Do you all understand my meaning? Tang Yini glanced at the 3 people, asking cautiously. The parents were also happy to comply. Just a few. It's not like it can't be done. If she were my daughter, she would have to achieve that. The lady also chimed in. But the men don't seem to be that perceptive, do they? When she heard her mother say that she understood a bit and asked, "Do you need me to explain again?" Her mother stroked her head gently, instructing. Not necessary. Hasn't the young master realized that it has already been accepted? How could he not try a bit harder for your sake? Tang Jun also happily said, "Then let's treat him like our son-in-law for now. It seems we should pretend not to know about this. If they try hard like this before long, he will become part of our family." Only then did they seem satisfied. Elsewhere, a pair of hands tightly grasped Fabre's, excitedly exclaiming, "Truly admirable benefactor." Hasn't benefactor completely captured her heart? It praised, making Fabre awkward, scratching his head and forcing a smile. Well, it's just courage and determination, that's all. The face was identical to Tang Yini's smiling, except for a rhombus-shaped green jade on its head. After a moment of silence, it said, "Benefactor, today might be the last time our grievances are resolved, so my spirit will soon be liberated." It glanced at the 3 children frolicking beside Fabre. "Take care of them." Fabre responded, "Understood." Standing still, letting its hair flow in the wind, it asked, "Is there anything we can do for Benefactor? If possible, we will do anything." Fabre raised his hand to his mouth, looking thoughtful. "If so, if it's not a bother, may I take a look at your body?" Fabre suggested, snapping his fingers. It blushed, holding tightly to its clothes, thinking, surely Benefactor is also a real man. After a hesitation, it agreed, "All right." Then without hesitation, it pulled down its clothes, thinking to itself, "It seems Benefactor is weak to beauty." Seeing this action, Fabre's face darkened, and he hurriedly stopped it. "Wait, do we really need to undress?" This time it was its turn to be embarrassed and confused, wondering, could it be? The children automatically covered their eyes, listening to the 2. "We won't undress anymore. Okay? If that makes you uncomfortable," Fabre shouted, denying. No, that's not what I meant. I just want to see the form of the jade centipede he straightforwardly requested, amidst its confusion. Only then did it understand what Fabre meant, hesitating. If it's about that. A second later, the scene changed dramatically, Fabre's excited shout echoing everywhere. Its entire body transformed dramatically. From a beautiful girl, she transformed into a giant jade centipede. Her body twisted her scales, shining coldly, yet her voice remained sweet and teasing. "Is this okay, Benefactor?" Exhaling a tired breath, Fabre's eyes shone brightly with excitement. "Oh, it's really huge. Can I touch it a bit?" he asked. But his hand was already reaching out. The jade centipede retorted, "You've already touched it, haven't you?" After touching, Fabre became greedier, asking for more. "Can I keep a little bit?" "Oh, it's so big. How can our joints withstand it? Isn't it that when you walk, your front feet go first, and then?" It heard this and wiggled its short front feet shyly, making a sound, wondering, "Are you talking about my front feet?" Seeing its adorable action, Fabre became excited again. "Can I touch your feet?" The jade centipede was speechless again. "You've already touched it." Fabre became more and more agitated, asking one question after another. "How powerful is its venom? And what about its eyes? Does it see with its eyes, or still use its antenna to feel?" The 3 children were still blindfolded, but it wasn't because they were shy. They just couldn't bear to look at the scene. He could only answer vaguely, and then suddenly let out a frightened cry. Staring at the sharp claw, he grasped his hand tightly and asked cautiously, "Then let me touch the venomous fang, just once." This question made Jade Centipede pause, reminding you that might be a bit dangerous. Hearing this, Fabre used a coquettish tone to attack the one who had promised to fulfill all his requests. Jade Centipede shook his head, feeling embarrassed. "What are you talking about, Benefactor?" Jade Centipede thought to himself, are my daughters really okay? His face clearly showed a greedy expression. This shell is so dazzling, something is not quite right. Tangshan clasped his hands together in front of his chin, his expression becoming gentler. Right, young hero. No, Fabre. I've heard Yini talk about you. From now on, you're like my child. Hearing the deep and powerful voice, Fabre was surprised and turned to look at the girl beside him. She also heard her father's words, her small face smiling gently. Fabre knew she wouldn't help him, so he was about to explain awkwardly. But there's still a 3-year trial period. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Tang Shan, not giving him a chance to refuse. The wedding will be held when you come of age, that's a given. Hearing this, Fabre helplessly waved his hand. No, that's not what I meant. Madame Tang, sitting beside him, smiled as she stroked her aged but well-cared-for face. Oh, my son-in-law, Fabre, welcome again. I'm your mother-in-law. Even Tang clan's leader joined in the excitement, his gray hair not hiding the sparkle in his eyes as he looked at Fabre, his aged face smiling. Now that Yini has found her ideal partner from now on, our Tang clan will be filled with good fortune. Seeing the people in the house showing their support for their marriage, Fabre didn't know what to say. He glanced at Tang Yini and called out softly, Yini. She didn't respond, but a smile appeared on her small face. He glanced at Tang Yini and called out softly, Yini. She didn't respond, but a smile appeared on her small face. He thought he might have seen wrong, but upon closer inspection, her expression returned to its usual indifferent and cold demeanor, which made him feel surprised. What's going on? Didn't sister set conditions for the marriage? Why does she seem to have accepted it now? Not knowing the current situation, he decided to go along with her wishes for now. Thinking this, Fabre regained his composure, scratched his head, and smiled awkwardly. Yes, I look forward to everyone's help. He thought that after his words, the atmosphere would become awkward, or at least he would be the only one feeling embarrassed. However, Tang Shan and his son didn't seem to care about him. The two elderly men just kept smiling and discussing something. This scene made Fabre feel puzzled. After discussing with his father for a while, Tang Shan said to him, Before you learn the poisonous arts of Tang clan, there's something I want to show you. Fabre looked at him in surprise. What is it? The adorable expression on his face caught the attention of the two old men, making them look at each other and chuckle. Tang Shan, representing the family head, said seriously, Hall of 10,000 Poisons. I assure you you'll like it. The 4 members of Tang clan formed a line with him, following behind as they walked forward under the lead of Tang Shan. As he curiously looked at the scenery behind the courtyard, Tang Jun spoke up. We've all been waiting for this moment. Tang Jun happily told him, This moment marks your official entry into Hall of 10,000 Poisons as a member of the Tang family. This is our family tradition. Everyone comes together. Fabre responded enthusiastically. I'm also looking forward to it, grandfather. As soon as he finished speaking, his breathing became rapid, and his face flushed with excitement at the prospect of entering Hall of 10,000 Poisons and witnessing many wonderful things. Fabre thought that Hall of 10,000 Poisons must be a place storing all kinds of poisonous medicine. Before he could think further, Fabre couldn't help but glance at Tang Yini in surprise. Before him was a beautiful young girl, confidently showing herself in the morning sunlight, her figure well-proportioned, and her family background impressive. Seeing this, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration at her beauty. He was taken aback, his cheeks flushing red uncontrollably as he thought, She's indeed a beauty, looking stunning from any angle like a painting. Tang Yini's parents had been observing his reactions as he gazed at their daughter. Unlike many Asian parents, they chuckled upon seeing their future son-in-law so taken with their daughter. Tang Shan suddenly teased him, Hey, young man, staring like that will make my daughter shy. Now that you're part of our family, why are you still dazed? It seems our son-in-law is really smitten with Yini. Tang Yini reminded him, Fabre, watch where you're going. He felt embarrassed, his face reddening as he quickly responded. A moment later, they arrived at a cave-like room outside, guarded by 3 muscular men. As they approached, he saw the bald man and the bearded man, their muscles well-defined, standing guard at the entrance with stern expressions. To his surprise, a martial artist clasped his hands in greeting in front of everyone and said respectfully, "Has the young master arrived?" Tang Jun quickly responded, "I want to show my son-in-law the Hall of 10,000 Poisons. Please open the door." The 3 of them immediately received the order and nodded in acknowledgement. As for Fabre, from the moment he arrived, he had been paying close attention to everything around him. He thought to himself that the security here was too strict, even compared to the medieval period. As soon as they received the order, the only person wearing clothes in the area shouted to the 2 others to open the door. The 2 of them heard the order and immediately used their muscular strength to open the enormous door. It took a lot of effort to open the massive, heavy door. The man who had shouted earlier curiously asked, "Why are we opening the door so early today?" Fabre saw that the 2 others were using all their might to open the door and looked surprised, not knowing what to say. Is opening the door really worth making such a big show? When both doors were fully open, the 2 men, one on each side, sat down, panting and sweating profusely, as if they had lost all their energy. The man guarding the door saw that everything was done and turned around to signal to everyone to come in. Tang Shan also quickly signaled to Fabre to come in. As they stepped inside, he said, "This is the iron gate made from the strong metal of Nam Man. Opening this gate is a great honor." Fabre responded in surprise. "Is that so?" When everyone had entered, Tang Shan said happily, "We're here!" Fabre's mouth dropped open as he looked around in amazement. Tang Shan added that this was the treasure trove containing all kinds of poisonous substances of the Tang clan. Tang Jun introduced to his son-in-law again. "This is Tang clan's poison hall of 10,000 poisons. Please be careful not to touch anything." Fabre responded curiously, "I understand. So this is Tang clan's poison hall. It's stored in bottles and bags, right?" Tang Shan nearby quickly replied, "That's right. There are many different types of poisonous substances here, such as paralysis poison and sleeping poison." As soon as he finished speaking, he cleverly pushed the conversation to the 2 young people by saying, "Yini, please explain it to Fabre. I'm sure my son-in-law will like it." Madame Tang beside him quickly understood and facilitated the interaction between the 2 young people. Tang Yini didn't show any objection to the idea and blushed, responding, "Yes, father." After speaking, she pulled Fabre to take a tour around Tang clan's poison hall, saying, "Come here. I'll show you the strongest poisonous substances of our Tang clan, starting with the Xiao Huang Jin." Yini spoke more and more shyly. "This is dispersal poison, a type of poison that martial artists need to be particularly careful with. If you inhale it, you won't be able to use your internal energy." She continued to list out the names of various deadly poisonous substances, making the 2 parents and Tang Jun smile and comment that both young people were lovely. Tang Yini's expression suddenly turned serious as she said that all of these were powerful poisons, but the strongest poison of the Tang clan was actually another type. After speaking, she handed Fabre a tiny bean and said, "Take this." Fabre looked puzzled and asked, "What is this?" He looked at the small bean in his hand and thought it resembled a bean. Tang Yini said that not counting the poison of the top 10 poisonous creatures, this was the strongest poison currently. She added that this was the herbal medicine symbolizing the Tang clan, and its name was ricin. Fabre initially looked confused and wondered to himself, "This is ricin. It's an extremely dangerous poison. Just 2 milligrams are enough to kill an adult. It's famous for a real assassination case when a Bulgarian dissident was killed with a special umbrella during the Cold War." Fabre was stunned and exclaimed, "It's hundreds, thousands of times stronger than cyanide." Tang Yini smiled and told Fabre that this poison was the closest to the Tang clan's goal of being colorless, tasteless, and invisible, making it the most valuable poison. She further explained that using this poison to kill was called Kim Sat. After speaking, Fabre felt as if Yini was radiating a fiery aura around her, and he heard her say, "Remember, Fabre, the strongest poison is not the one that causes the most pain or is the most terrifying, but the one that kills silently and surely." The Tang clan's poison art aimed for that, silent and sure. Fabre's mind was flooded with images of the people in his future family, and he realized that they were a family of assassins. Just then a voice interrupted their conversation. "That's enough." Tang Jun's voice came from afar. "Next, let's go see the animals that Fabre has been looking forward to." Fabre showed excitement and asked, "You mean the poisonous animals?" The old man also offered to let him manage them, saying that the family would support him with everything necessary. Fabre was so excited that he stuttered, "Really? You'll support my hobby?" Tang Jun spoke up, suggesting that they leave immediately. Before he could finish speaking, an urgent message arrived from afar, forcing them to stay. The family head had urgent news to report. Ju Bai rushed from afar, panting heavily, and arrived where everyone was. Tang Shan saw this and anxiously asked Ju Bai what was wrong. After catching his breath, Ju Bai urgently reported to Tang Shan and the others that they needed to go to Xuanwu Pavilion immediately. Tang Shan asked curiously why they needed to go there. Jiu Bai quickly explained that the elders of their clan. Tang Jun's face turned red with anger, and he shouted, "What's going on with them?" Fabre recalled the elders of the clan and thought about what the person had said. Ju Bai raised his hand and quickly said there were two matters. One was that the medicine they sent to the Lord of Sichuan was ineffective, and he had sent a complaint letter. The other matter was... Ju Bai glanced at Fabre, looking embarrassed. Fabre understood what he meant and sighed. He then directly mentioned the matter at Hall of 10,000 Poisons. Tang Jun didn't seem surprised and responded that the news spread quickly. As he finished speaking, Tang Jun and the others left, telling Fabre to come along and that his younger brother would follow him. After a while, they arrived at Xuanwu Pavilion, where many elderly people were gathered, discussing something in hushed tones. When they saw everyone arrive, one of them suddenly shouted Tang Shan's name. Before they could even greet each other, they began to scold and berate them. "Why did you make such an important decision on your own?" they said. "How could you marry our precious Yini to a nameless unknown child?" Upon hearing this, Tang Shan clenched his teeth and asked them, "You call him a nameless unknown child?" Tang Jun became furious, defending Fabre in front of everyone. He said, "You're insulting my son-in-law." The others quickly followed suit, criticizing Tang Jun. Tang Jun stepped forward and asked, "I made the decision. What's your opinion?" The elderly person stuttered, unable to respond. Fabre, standing outside, heard the harsh words and showed his displeasure. He said the former family head should advise the current family head. "I have just agreed to this." Seeing Fabre's expression change, Yini apologized to him for the inconvenience. Fabre sighed, feeling helpless, and thought that he had made Yini worry again. While the elders were still arguing, Fabre suddenly spoke up, apologizing for interrupting their conversation. He said seriously that this matter seemed to be due to his own incompetence. After speaking, Fabre patted his shoulder proudly and shouted, "If I show my abilities, will the elders accept it?" An old man in the distance looked surprised and asked, "What do you mean?" With a confident expression, Fabre declared that he could solve the problem with the Lord of Sichuan. Tang Yini and Madame Tang beside him were worried and anxious, scolding Fabre for what he was doing. "Although I'm not someone who cares about face, if anyone dares to disturb the peaceful life of my pet, I won't let them off." In the large courtyard, everyone was in an uproar, because Fabre dared to defy his elders. The elderly people scowled and said, "You dare to..." An elderly man with white hair scolded the other elders, saying that a young boy like Fabre dared to interrupt their conversation. Others followed suit, criticizing Fabre. Yini and Madame Tang watched the argument unfold. The family had thought that Fabre had no background and dared to interfere in their matters, so they had proposed a young man from a prestigious family to be their son-in-law. Upon hearing their complaints, Fabre thought to himself that he couldn't listen to these old men's nonsense anymore. He remembered his live stream where he wrapped a cobra around his body, which had received many views and over 1,000 subscribers, with an average of over 3,000 live viewers. As Fabre, he had reason to respond to these old men. The elders still hadn't acknowledged him as their son-in-law, so he was still considered a guest. With such a large fan base, being attacked without reason was a common occurrence. Fabre continued to explain, and Tang Shan beside him was amazed. Fabre had not only helped Tang Yini, but also saved the family head by eliminating the blood hand Rakshasa Yun Xiang. Fabre clasped his hands to show respect and continued. The elders dare to insult our benefactor and guest in front of us. Is this the etiquette and rules of the Tang clan? As a streamer, being attacked by many people was a familiar experience. With his rich experience, Fabre quickly turned the situation around. The elders, who were angry just moments before now, coughed and cleared their throats, saying that they were just a bit too impulsive. Fabre felt proud of himself and thought that the others were useless. Some people were still worried, but Fabre had already resolved the issue. However, the matter of eliminating the blood hand Rakshasa Yun Xiang was still considered too unbelievable. Tang Shan brought out evidence to defend Fabre, saying that he wasn't lying. The elderly man beside him was shocked and stuttered. "What?" As soon as they opened the book, they were shocked and muttered, "The blood manual is written in blood. It is indeed of the blood sect." Tang Shan said to his son-in-law, "Fabre, let us see the jade centipede." The young man obediently replied, "Yes, father-in-law." The people around them wondered jade centipede. The young man summoned his treasures, and bright objects surrounded his hands, making everyone curious and watch. People witnessed something protruding from his clothes. Cute small creatures gradually appeared and made sounds to prove their existence. The people around were stunned and asked, "Are they the golden centipedes?" Tang Shan spoke up to clarify. "They are the offspring of the jade centipede that my son-in-law is raising. If I say they have killed Yun Xiang, would you believe it?" The elders stuttered, unable to believe their ears. Tang Shan continued with a proud expression. "If we cannot acknowledge this son-in-law, what should we call him? Abba?" Standing beside him smiled and said to the creatures, "Don't bite people, or you'll end up like Yun Xiang, black as coal." The elders were so surprised that they couldn't speak. Now they turned against each other, saying, "We never said we wouldn't acknowledge him. There are just some procedures to follow. He's angry because he skipped them." Tang Jun sighed and said, "All right, let's forget about the son-in-law issue. Why didn't you agree to the Haimye, all of 10,000 poisons matter?" The elders argued again. "He's not even an official member of the clan, and how can we entrust Hall of 10,000 poisons to a youngster?" Upon hearing this, the old man began to waver. "Indeed, how can we entrust something so important to him?" Tang Jun proposed a solution. "Can you prove your ability?" Fabre confidently replied. Of course. He asserted that to prove himself worthy of the Tang clan, he would resolve the issue in the Tang clan's way, using poison. Upon hearing this, everyone was frightened. What? People started to panic. "You want to poison the Sichuan clan's leader?" They were told they were discussing sending medicine, not killing people. Even Tang Jun and Tang Shan looked at him with confusion. Fabre was puzzled. "What do you mean, patriarch? Don't we use poison in the Tang clan?" The next day arrived, and Fabre was training with Tang Jun. The old man said, "All right, let's start the challenge. From today on, you'll begin learning the 5 poisons, returning to the origin technique of the Tang clan." Fabre was excited upon hearing this. After the initial excitement, Fabre thought about the training and asked, "Is it still physical training?" The old man replied, "The body will adapt to the martial arts as you train." Tang Jun explained that the Tang clan emphasizes practicality, so Fabre would learn things that could be applied directly to combat. The old man presented Fabre with a set of inherited formidable weapons. Tang Jun introduced the weapons one by one, including hidden daggers, coins, and swords. Although there were other hidden weapons, these 5 were the main ones. The old man asked Fabre, "Which hidden weapon is the easiest to use?" Fabre thought and replied, "Probably the dagger." Tang Jun acknowledged the answer. "That's correct. Now, which one is the hardest to use?" Fabre glanced at the small pouch and said, "Maybe the powder because you need to sprinkle it." This time, the answer was incorrect. "The hardest to use is the hairpin," Tang Jun corrected. Fabre was surprised. The hairpin. Because it's small and fragile, making it hard to throw. The old man explained that the reason was because one had to remember the exact position where the hairpin was thrown. Fabre was surprised when Tang Jun pulled out a brush pen. Tang Jun skillfully disassembled the pen, and in an instant the brush pen transformed into numerous pieces flying everywhere. Fabre watched in awe. The pieces were as light as goose down and snow white. It was hard to believe that such soft and gentle objects could transform into sharp pieces, ready to attack. Tang Jun stood calmly with his arms crossed while Fabre was frightened, drawing his legs up. Fabre thought that the feather-like objects were piercing his skin like needles. His eyes widened as he watched the dancing sharp feathers. Tang Jun explained that the Tang clan had a hidden weapon technique called Blossom Rain over Heaven, which involved covering the surrounding area with hundreds or thousands of needles. Fabre was taken aback. "You mean I have to fight enemies surrounded by needles like this?" he asked. "If there are needles everywhere, where can I even stand?" The old man replied, "That's why you need to remember their positions carefully to avoid harming yourself." Fabre thought to himself, "Good grief." Fabre asked, "Do I need to remember even the positions of the needles that are knocked away or fall down?" The old man nodded. "Of course." The old man added that for the 5 poisons, one needed to remember at least 100 positions. Yini had memorized 1,000 positions when she was still a prodigy. Fabre was amazed. The scene shifted to a peaceful sky above the mountain peak full of energy. Meanwhile, Fabre was exhausted, lying face down on the floor. Yini approached him and asked, "Is this okay, Fabre?" He greeted her. "Yini, miss." She continued, "I heard you're going to catch Bear Bee, so I've prepared." Fabre immediately clarified, "No, it's not necessary. I was going to wait, but if I had this, I could catch it myself." Yini was surprised. "Wait. You're going to wait for Bear Bee," Fabre responded nonchalantly. "You'll understand when we get there." Yini looked naive. "Is that so?" Fabre initiated the conversation with Yini. "Do you know where Bear Bee's nest is?" she replied. "I've found one already. It's near here. We can go there right away." She looked concerned. "But you've read the letter from the Sichuan city governor, right?" he responded. "Yes, of course." After hearing that, she asked Fabre again. "You're still quite young, so I'm a bit worried. Are you sure you understand the contents of the letter fully?" This made him chuckle softly. "Of course I do. Miss, that's a very important matter for a man's yang energy." Upon hearing this, she felt embarrassed and advised him to stop. "Enough, that's enough." Then she commented, "You seem to understand the issue quite well." "That's right. The big problem that the Sichuan city governor is facing is impotence." She praised him. "Fabre, you're really knowledgeable beyond your age," he stuttered. "Well, it's just that I've been living alone, so..." Suddenly, she quickly ran off saying, "Let's go quickly!" This made Fabre have to chase after her, calling out, "Yini, miss!" The two of them entered a deep forest where the trees were lush and wildflowers were blooming alongside the path. Fabre was attracted to a small animal climbing around. Yini had to grab his collar to stop him. The two of them stopped at a spot. Yini told him, "We've arrived." Fabre responded, "We're here." Upon seeing the cave, they were certain that they were at the right place. While putting on protective gear, Yini asked Fabre, "But Fabre, what's the point of finding a bee nest with no bees?" He explained to his would-be wife, Although we're looking for Bear Bee, we won't catch them. Let's surprise her. The two of them carefully searched through every rock crevice. He looked intently into the cave and told her, "The poisonous insects we're looking for are usually found in small bee nests." Yinny wondered. Poisonous insects live in bee nests. He didn't deny it. As he spotted something, Fabre joyfully said to her, "Lucky this bee nest seems to have what we're looking for." With a quick hand movement, he used tweezers to pick up a small prey. He exclaimed, "Got you, you little guy!" This made Yinny's eyes widen in surprise. She asked him, "Fabre, that insect." He continued, "We're not here to catch Bear Bee, but this insect." He was delighted, thinking that this creature would solve the Sichuan city governor's problem. Yinny observed the insect in Fabre's hand, looking a bit uncertain, and said, "Fabre, is this insect an earth gall?" Upon hearing her guess, he raised the trembling creature in his hand and smiled. "Yes, that's right." In his heart, he was surprised, thinking, "They call it earth gall here." He brought it closer for her to examine more closely. The creature looked pitiful with tearful eyes and a shivering body. He explained, "This insect is found in Bear Bee's nests in the Central Plains. It's called earth gall here, but in Korea, it's known as bee-biting leaf." Yinny was surprised upon hearing this earth gall is found in Bear Bee's nests. "I didn't know that." He happily shared their life cycle is quite special. Then he shared his knowledge with her. The reproduction method of the Meloidae family is quite unusual. Normally, when they lay eggs, they protect them or create a safe environment for them to hatch. But this species is different. They just lay eggs. The small, oval-shaped yellow eggs can appear on rock tips, tree trunks, or leaves. They can be anywhere. Whether in a dense or deserted area, their eggs can be found. They just lay them without caring about anything. Somehow the larvae of the bee-biting leaf will hatch and climb to the highest point nearby. When they reach the top, they form a strange shape. And then something unexpected happens. They cling to each other and pretend to be a flower. Don't ever search for bee-biting leaf larvae online. When a beautiful bee comes to collect nectar and spots them, it'll be delighted thinking it's a real flower. The bee will fly towards it. The bee will be surprised, wondering when flowers appeared here. Thinking they're flowers, the bee continues its work collecting pollen. Their faces turn sinister as they know what's coming next. The bee's hand reaches out as they get closer. The evil hand reaches out to the bee. They quickly cling to the bee's body, and that's the end of the game. The bee's nest is done for. He pointed to the earth gall in his hand and said, "I don't know why they choose bees, but I've heard it's the best environment for the earth gall larvae to develop." Yinny hesitated. "Is that so?" She slightly bent down, looking pained. "Poor little bees." Fabre smiled, comforting her. "It's just the law of nature. There's nothing we can do." She reached out to touch his head, remembering something. "But isn't this the kind of poison that causes burns?" He smiled, confirming. "Yes, it is. It can cause burns." He described the wound with red marks on the skin, explaining that the orange liquid secreted from the bee-biting leaf's body contains a toxin called cantharidin. If it comes into contact with skin, it causes blisters like burns. She looked at the pitiful earth gall, her face gradually turning red. She bit her lip, covering her mouth with her hand, and whispered, "But it has its uses, right?" He responded yes until the toxin is expelled from the body. Seeing her reaction, he smiled slyly. "It can make men rise to the occasion." Yinny turned around and ran, the red mark on her face darkening. She ran while closing her eyes and shouting loudly, "That's enough! Let's go back to Hall of 10,000 Poisons!" Fabre was surprised and called out, "Wait, let us catch a few more." After a while, they caught the earth gall, also known as the bee-bitten leaf. Then they returned to Hall of 10,000 Poisons, where Fabre instructed the martial artists on how to prepare the medicine. He looked at the people in front of him and spoke slowly. "Listen carefully. First, we need to dry the earth gall, and grind it into powder. The faces of the people around him gradually changed as they heard his analysis. Mathematical formulas swirled in their heads as they listened. If they consumed 3 parts equivalent to 11.75 millimoles of poison, it would certainly be life-threatening. For every kilogram of body weight, if they consumed 310 of a part equivalent to 1.25 milligaules of poison, half of the people who consumed it would die. Fabre looked at everyone and concluded, "Therefore, we need to prepare the medicine with a dosage of 1/10 of a part, which is equivalent to 0.375 milligaules, or about 10 drops of water, which is 0.351 milliliters." After finishing speaking, he asked everyone if they understood. The faces around him were stunned, and there was a moment of silence. However, in their minds they were thinking, "My head is about to explode." A man standing at the front removed his face mask and spoke slowly. "The mathematical calculations of Your Excellency are truly excellent." He emphasized each word. "We will definitely succeed." Fabre smiled and replied, "Yes, haha, I'm counting on all of you." That night was a full moon night. Under the moonlight in a brightly lit room, a voice was heard. Who would have thought that Earthgall would have such an effect? After listening to his granddaughter's account of catching Earthgall and the story at the medicine preparation room, Yinny's grandfather spoke up. "It seems we need to re-examine the poisonous medicines that Tang clan possesses." Yinny obediently replied, "Yes, I think so too." Her grandfather raised his hand to his mouth and coughed lightly. Then asked, "Is he good at mathematics, too?" Yinny replied, "Yes." He divided 1 part into 10 parts and said it was equivalent to the weight of 10 drops of water. Upon hearing this, her grandfather's expression turned serious. He rubbed his index finger and thumb together and spoke in a low tone. "Truly." Thinking of the still immature appearance of the young man, his eyebrows furrowed, and he said in a deep tone, "I thought I knew a lot about poisonous medicines, but he is beyond my imagination. The more I learn, the more I realize that he is a treasure of Tang clan." Suddenly he turned to his granddaughter and asked with a questioning tone, "So you like him even more than before?" Yinny's face turned red, and she replied, "Grandfather." Her face flushed, and she avoided eye contact with her grandfather. She clenched her fist and brought it to her mouth to hide her embarrassment. Speaking in a soft voice, "I just felt that I was too impulsive at first, so I felt guilty." Her grandfather closed his eyes as if he understood his granddaughter's feelings and advised, "All right, just treat him well in the future." Suddenly he asked another question. "How do we test the effectiveness of the medicine?" Yinny was taken aback and opened her eyes wide. The matter is..." Recalling that matter, she covered her face, which had turned red. She felt as if her face and hands were emitting heat. She spoke in an embarrassed tone. "The elders of the branch are too arrogant." Remembering Fabre's ugly appearance when he said that she told her grandfather about it, her grandfather was shocked and asked again, "What?" In an instant, he raised his head and burst out laughing. "Ha ha, he's indeed an interesting person." Yinny stood beside him still with a flushed face and didn't say a word. The night sky was covered with clouds, creating a dark and gloomy atmosphere. The forest under the sky seemed to be submerged in a deep and mysterious night. Another night passed under the blue sky with white clouds drifting lazily in the wind. Under the morning light, the forest came alive like a living painting. At this moment, people were gathering in a large room, looking at the martial artist standing in front of them. The elders were focused on the person in front of them, some with their hands on their cheeks, others with their arms crossed, waiting. The martial artist placed a hexagonal wooden box in front of Fabre and spoke. Fabre looked at the box and said, "Oh, this is..." The martial artist clasped his hands together and explained, "Yes, we mixed licorice powder and honey to create a sweet taste, making it easier for you to take." Fabre thought to himself, the details are really well taken care of. Fabre opened the box and saw the black shiny pill on the red velvet inside. He asked, "Did you prepare it?" according to my instructions?" The martial artist replied carefully. "Of course, Fabre. We followed the exact dosage you specified." The elders outside began to murmur. One of them sneered, making a fuss about it. Another person beside him with his arms crossed agreed, yes, as if they've created something amazing. The man sitting in the main seat closed his eyes, and his authoritative voice was heard. Silence. He looked at Fabre and spoke, "All right, the medicine has been prepared. How will you prove its effectiveness?" Fabre asked back. "How to prove it?" A hand slammed down on the table, creating a loud noise. A voice shouted simultaneously, "Of course we need to prove it." The elder with a big belly was the one who slammed his hand on the table. He stood up and shouted, "How can we send an untested poison to the governor of Sichuan?" The person sitting beside him also chimed in, "Yes, if there's a mishap, it will be very dangerous." Fabre looked at the martial artist and asked, "Is there no other way?" The martial artist nodded and replied, "Yes." At the same time, his hand reached into his pocket as if searching for something. The group of elders saw the other party's appearance and looked up to observe. A warrior walked to the side of the elders and placed a hexagonal medicine box on the table, similar to Fabre's box in front of the elder with a large belly. The man looked puzzled and grunted. He then picked up the pill and examined it, saying with disdain, "You want us to test the medicine? Who man knows what's inside it?" Someone beside him reminded him that the young man was not only an outsider, but also had a dark heart. Fabre smiled wickedly as he saw their reactions. Yinny's grandfather was enjoying the show when he was interrupted by a call. "Grandfather." He turned around in surprise and asked, "What's wrong?" The boy sitting below clasped his hands together, placing them under his chin. It seemed like there was dark smoke rising from behind him. He spoke with a hint of malice. "Didn't you tell me that those who practice the Tang clan's martial arts won't be afraid of any poison? Isn't that right? You said so yourself." The boy clapped his hands together still with a childish look on his face and said, "But look, aren't you afraid?" The man called grandfather reached out to touch his head, seemingly agreeing. "It seems to be true what you're saying." Noticing that things were going according to plan, the boy saw the others' faces darken and cleared his throat. "Come on, you're all elders of the clan who have reached the level of being immune to all poisons. Are you afraid of a little poison from Earthgall?" Sure enough, an elder crushed the pill, his face full of confidence. Fabre's people laughed with delight as they watched the others take the pill into their mouths. One of them sneered, "Who's afraid of such low-level poison?" Another person chimed in, "You've misjudged us." One of the elders, after putting the pill in his mouth, threatened, "If this medicine doesn't work, you'll face our clan's discipline." He then closed his mouth, chewed the pill, and swallowed it. The atmosphere became silent as everyone waited for the effects of the medicine. After a while, when nothing happened, one of them sneered. He pointed at Fabre and shouted, "See, nothing's happened!" But before he could finish speaking, he was shocked, like he had been struck by lightning. When he felt his lower body suddenly lift up. The group of elders looked down, their faces filled with an awkward and bizarre atmosphere. On that day, the Shoas clan's discipline was re-established in a grand manner. Under the blazing sunlight, a voice rang out, "Send the medicine to the governor of Sichuan. It's very effective." A moment later, the group of elders left with extremely awkward expressions. They walked quickly, holding their clothes in front of their stomachs and lifting them up. Watching them leave with red faces, Fabre said, as if echoing his grandfather's words, "As long as you provoke them about the poison, they'll fall into the trap." He smiled and replied, "Those are people who only have their pride left, so they can't do anything else." The grandfather smiled and reminded him, "Don't hate them. They're doing it for the clan." The boy asked again, "Is that so?" The grandfather closed his eyes and said gently, "After all, they're family." The boy obediently replied, "Understand." At this moment, Yinny rushed in with a worried look. she said anxiously. Little Fabre, something big has happened. Seeing her like that, the boy asked, What's wrong, miss? She bent down, catching her breath, and said, We. She slowly stood up, adjusted her breathing, and said, Our pet has a problem. Suddenly, a hand grabbed the boy's collar and lifted him up. A loud voice said, Son-in-law. The man's face was full of anger, his eyes blazing. What do you mean, what's ours? The man's hand was gripping the boy's clothes so tightly that the veins were visible. He looked at Fabre with anger and asked, Do you two have a child? It seems I haven't taught you well enough. Yinny, standing beside them, was also shocked by her grandfather's actions. She shook her head, both angry and embarrassed, and said, It's not a child, it's the jade centipede that Fabre is raising. Only then did Fabre look shocked, his face filled with worry. He opened his mouth, but for a long time he couldn't say anything. The grandfather released the boy's collar. The boy walked to Yinny's side, looking worried, and asked, Is it about the jade centipede? Yinny quickly explained, Recently I saw that you were practicing a lot, so I asked my sister to take care of the little jade centipedes. The boy thought to himself, Something's happened to my beloved pets. In his confusion, he turned to Yinny and said, Let me see. His grandfather's angry voice sounded in his ear. Fabre is not here. A moment later, the two of them saw the jade centipedes lying obediently on the ground, ignoring the red marks on the boy's face. Yinny whispered, Did they suddenly move? Yinny clenched her fists and said, They were fine until this morning. I hope they're not hurt anywhere. The boy looked at the adorable jade centipedes on the ground and commented, Their color is transparent and their shells look strange. Fabre's eyes suddenly lit up as he thought to himself that Yinny seemed to be smiling and chatting happily with the person next to her, so there was no need to worry. Upon seeing the jade centipedes slowly moving, he explained that they were molting, just like snakes, shedding their skin as they grow larger, and it was probably time for them to do so. Yinny's grandfather asked in surprise. Molting Fabre leaned against the edge of the tank and replied, Yes. Suddenly, one of the centipedes rubbed its head against the ground, making a rustling sound. Yinny exclaimed, Look, Xiaolong! As they watched, the centipede emerged from its old skin with a new orange-yellow exoskeleton. And Yinny cried out, Look at its head! The crowd watched as the centipede completely shed its skin, and Yinny's grandfather exclaimed with delight, Oh, it's really magical! Yinny was also intently observing, and suddenly she said, Fabre, the other two are about to molt, too. Another centipede slowly emerged from its shell, its new skin a soft yellow-orange color. The scene was so gentle that it made one want to touch it. The last centipede also shed its skin and began to move slowly. As they watched, all three centipedes lay calmly on the ground. Fabre said happily, They've all molted. Yinny's eyes lit up as she looked at them and said, They seem to have grown larger. Yinny turned to Fabre and asked, What are their names? Fabre hesitated for a moment, thinking to himself that they didn't have names. Fabre's face went blank as he stroked his chin, looking thoughtful for a moment, looking at the three centipedes on the ground. Fabre, thinking himself clever, called out Centipede 1, Centipede 2, Centipede 3. Yinny shook her head, disagreeing with the silly names Fabre had just come up with. Yinny continued to shake her head, disagreeing, and explained that if the centipedes lived for 1,000 years, they would become dragons. She thought they needed more majestic names fitting for dragons. Fabre couldn't help but laugh and said, Ha ha, come on, centipedes can't really become dragons after 1,000 years. Yinny's grandfather intervened, saying, Well, even if they're just called dragons, we can call them Tian Long. Fabre understood now where Yinny's attitude had come from, and thought to himself that it was all because of her grandfather's influence. After careful consideration, Fabre said, All right, let's give them names. He then turned to Yinny and suggested, How about Chu Xiang? And Bin Yinny repeated the names in surprise. Fabre explained that the first centipede to emerge was Chu. The second, being possibly female, was Xiang, symbolizing fragrance, and the third, with its shiny exoskeleton, was Bin, Yini watched the 3 centipedes intently and slowly repeated the names Fabre had given them, Chu Xiang and Bin. The 3 of them continued to observe the centipedes with delight. Yini whispered that, traditionally, the father gives names to the children, and so the little centipedes had their new names. As Fabre walked down the road, he stumbled, drawing the attention of passers-by. He thought to himself that after a day the centipedes were still clinging to him, feeling exhausted. Fabre sat down beside a cargo box by the roadside, opened his mouth, and exhaled heavily. He felt that his inner clothes were slightly damp and thought that his body wasn't completely dry yet, but he could move around. He sighed, still feeling a bit unaccustomed. Suddenly, the centipedes poked their heads out from his clothes, rubbing against his cheek. Fabre smiled and joked with them, thinking that they had grown heavier and larger, especially in size. Fabre lay down on the cargo box, looking up at the sky. His cheek was red from the friction caused by the centipedes. One of them made a soothing sound, as if apologizing for being too heavy. Another centipede chimed in, making similar sounds. Fabre sighed, reminiscing that originally they were as small as sausages, but now they were as thick as his arm. Fabre watched the centipedes grow with joy, feeling them move beside him. He thought to himself that they had outgrown his chest, and now they mostly stayed on his arms and waist. Suddenly he heard a loud laughter, ha ha ha, and saw 2 men, one tall and one short, walking down the road. The shorter man, who had a mole on his face, was holding a small red bag and smiling at the taller man. Fabre heard him say, "Let's go to Flower Pavilion." The taller man agreed. As Fabre watched them go, still hearing the echo of their laughter, he stroked the head of a centipede onto his body, and thought that making money was indeed easy. He looked after them with a puzzled expression, wondering what was going on. Looking up at the sky, Fabre thought it was a beautiful day, with white clouds floating gently across the sky. In the courtyard of the Sichuan Tang clan, everything was peaceful and serene. The clan leader cleared his throat, expressing his satisfaction with the news. He looked at Fabre and asked, "Didn't you send a self-prepared medicine to the Sichuan city lord not long ago?" Fabre nodded in response. The clan leader continued, "I heard that the medicine was used with great effect, and the city lord sent a generous reward along with his gratitude." Fabre and the other person were overjoyed upon hearing this. Yini's father laughed loudly. "You're really something, becoming my son-in-law and already bringing me benefits. You've helped me a lot." The young man scratched his head, embarrassed, and smiled. "It's nothing." Suddenly he suppressed his smile and spoke in a serious tone. "So I won't stroke my beard and look at you directly, saying that I'll give you a magical medicine. Even if I offer it to you, you'll still decline modestly, right?" The young man was taken aback and asked, "Magical medicine? What do you mean?" In his mind, he recalled the old man's previous words about magical medicine enhancing one's internal energy. Yini suddenly interjected, "Father, if it's magical medicine, what is it?" The old man replied in a low voice. "It's nothing too significant." He looked at the 2 of them and spoke slowly. "The honey of the golden-furred bee king." Upon hearing this, they thought of bees collecting nectar. The young man thought to himself, "Honey, I've heard that to become a master internal energy is crucial, so I'll accept it." Thinking this, he happily agreed and said loudly, "Thank you, father-in-law." Yini's expression suddenly changed, no longer joyful. She called out, "Father." She spoke in a neutral tone. "Father, you said it's a reward, but it's just honey." Her father looked embarrassed and stuttered. Before he could finish, Yini grabbed Fabre's arm and raised it, her voice filled with anger. This time, Fabre's matter isn't trivial. Although the golden-furred bee king is a mid-level venomous insect, its honey is the lowest-grade magical medicine among all. It's not worthy of Fabre's contribution. She frowned, demanding a reward for the young man, at least a magical medicine that could enhance internal energy for a year. Her father lowered his eyes and spoke in a subdued tone, explaining that even magical medicine requires expensive preparation. Upon hearing this, Yini clenched her fists, her eyes blazing with anger. She gritted her teeth and said, "Compared to what Fabre has done, it's still cheap." On the other side, Yini's father turned his face away, covering his mouth, as he coughed weakly. In his heart, he thought that his grown daughter was being too demanding. Fabre spoke up, breaking the tense atmosphere. He looked at his father-in-law and asked, "What is the golden-furred bee king?" The old man turned back, cleared his throat, and began to explain. He thought of the large golden beehive on a tree branch, with busy bees flying back and forth. He explained that the golden-furred bee king was a mid-level venomous insect typically found in the forest. It was a large bee the size of a small dog. According to his experience, consuming its honey could enhance one's internal energy for 2 months. However, Fabre was more interested in the size of the golden-furred bee king. His eyes lit up, and he asked excitedly, "As big as a puppy?" "That's fascinating." Yini saw Fabre's excited expression and pinched his cheek. "Fabre, wait a moment. I'm still angry." At this moment, her father spoke up again, looking somewhat embarrassed. "Yini, child. Father didn't mean it that way. I thought Fabre would want to go find the golden-furred bee king himself, so I chose this." Upon hearing this, Fabre was surprised, and thought to himself, "Directly? Really?" He quickly stood up, his voice filled with excitement. "You want me to go find the golden-furred bee king directly?" The old man nodded in confirmation. "Yes, that's right." Fabre's breathing quickened and his face flushed with excitement. He thought to himself, "Go get honey directly." "When I was a YouTuber, I used to do this often." He rushed towards this door, shouting, "Let's go, father-in-law. I'm very good at getting honey." The old man laughed heartily. "Ha ha! I knew you'd be interested." Yini sighed, watching the two leave. She could still hear their conversation. Fabre asked curiously, "What does the golden-furred bee king look like?" Her father replied nonchalantly, "Ah, it looks like a bee, of course." Leaving the Sichuan Tang clan, their journey to obtain honey had begun. On the way, Fabre thought to himself that since his father-in-law had given him valuable information, he believed he wouldn't have any competitors. Unexpectedly, upon arrival, they saw 2 groups of people arguing loudly. A scar-faced man shouted, "We were here first, so the golden-furred bee king's honey is ours." A black-clothed man retorted, "We bought the information legally, so it's ours." Fabre's group was surprised upon hearing this. The scar-faced man asked back, "You bought the mama's information?" "We did too. Did you buy it from a man with messy hair and a large mole on his face?" The black-clothed man couldn't hide his surprise. "How did you know?" "Anyway, we won't back down." Fabre's expression froze as he thought of the 2 people he had seen on the way. He realized that they must have sold the information to these people. Fabre understood that they had been betrayed. Yini's father, who had been listening to the conversation, was now trembling with anger. He clenched his fists and cursed under his breath. "Those damnable people!" he shouted. "How dare they insult the Sichuan Tang clan right here in Sichuan?" The crowd turned to look in the direction of the shout, their faces filled with surprise. One of them exclaimed, "What the Sichuan Tang clan?" Fabre smiled wryly, thinking that his plan to get honey had been ruined. Fabre recalled that before they set out, Yini's father had warned him to be cautious. "Fabre, since this is your first time leaving the clan, you must be extremely careful and never forget that you are a member of the Tang clan." Fabre responded respectfully. "Yes, sir." He glanced at his grandson, signaling him to look down at the people standing below him. "Take them with you. You also need to learn how to manage people gradually," he said seriously. Fabre looked at him in surprise and asked, "You mean I should take them with me?" He looked towards Yini, who was standing behind him, and asked curiously, "But Miss Yini, Before he could finish, his grandfather burst into laughter. Ha ha ha! This young lad, Yini, is one of your people, your partner in life. You're the number one. Feeling embarrassed, he blushed and stuttered. Life partner. Yini smiled and encouraged him. Brother, we'll do well, Fabre. She added. I'll help you too, brother. He felt even more embarrassed and replied, I'll do my best. At that moment, the people from the Sichuan Tang clan and the others were staring at each other. Fabre felt anxious and thought to himself, what should I do? He turned to the man beside him, Yuejiang, the leader of the poisonous blood team, and asked for his opinion. What should we do about this? Yuejiang stroked his chin and said, Let's share the resources with them. However, his grandfather didn't seem to agree with this suggestion. Yini folded her arms and said disdainfully, Who are they to demand a share from our Sichuan Tang clan? She also expressed her agreement with her grandfather's unspoken opinion. These people are really bold. She looked at the people opposite them, her eyes revealing a hint of killing intent. Her voice also became lower. They dare to sell the information that our Sichuan Tang clan has bought. The leader of the opposing group was taken aback when he saw Yini and exclaimed, Tang Yini! The people behind him panicked and cried out, Tang Yini from the Tang clan is here. The leader quickly cupped his hands and gritted his teeth, thinking to himself. He lowered his head and said, Feng Yun sect. We didn't know that this was related to the Sichuan Tang clan. We'll withdraw. The people around him were surprised by his actions and seemed to understand the reason. They also cupped their hands and said, Yunhu sect will also withdraw. Another person cursed. Damn it. We'll leave too. Someone else from the White Jade Ghost Slayer sect also said, We won't participate either. Watching the people fleeing as if they had seen a ghost, Fabre was surprised and thought to himself, Is it because of the Sichuan Tang clan's reputation? After the people had disappeared, Yuejiang said in a low tone, I don't think it's that simple. He explained his speculation. They will hide somewhere. Those 4 sects won't just withdraw like that. He clasped his hands behind his back and continued. First, they'll find a good location nearby. Obviously, they're hiding nearby and waiting for an opportunity. Then he turned to his subordinate and ordered, Seeking Defeat, determine the location of those people. Seeking Defeat cupped his hands and replied, Yes, Chief. Seeing that Fabre still looked worried, Yini comforted him. Don't worry, Fabre. He looked at the vast forest in front of him and whispered, My bees. At that moment, Yini, Fabre, and Yuejiang were hiding behind a rock. In front of them was a large tree with a big hole at the base. Several large bees were flying around the hole. Upon closer inspection, the bees had black and yellow stripes and were covered in thick hair. The bees were flying in and out of the tree, making a relatively loud buzzing noise. Fabre exclaimed in surprise, That's the golden-furred bee king. Yini was also impressed. I've never seen one before. It's really big. Fabre's face lit up with excitement. Isn't it cute? Yini praised. The fur looks fluffy, Yuejiang said proudly. That's why it's called the golden-furred bee king. After observing for a while, Fabre estimated. This colony seems a bit small. Maybe a few hundred bees, he asked. Can bees grow that big? Yini asked curiously. What do you mean by colony? Fabre patiently explained. It's a term used to describe a group of bees. Usually a colony has around 5,000 to 7,000 bees. Yini was surprised. You can know that without going inside, Fabre replied confidently. Just by observing the number of bees coming and going, you can estimate the size of the colony. Just then they heard footsteps behind them. They turned around to see Seeking Defeat kneeling on one knee. Reporting, Chief, we've found the 4 sects. Yuejiang asked, Where are they? Seeking Defeat closed his eyes tightly and hesitated before speaking. Seeking Defeat reported on his observations. As expected, they're gathering firewood and waiting. He couldn't help but curse. Those damn people are obviously on the opposite side. Yu Jiang stroked his chin thoughtfully and said, They're probably waiting for nightfall to extract the honey using the Tang clan's method, Faber asked curiously. What's the Tang clan's method? Yuezhang explained. If you burn Artemisia leaves and let the smoke enter the beehive, the bees will become more docile. Then we can extract the honey. Fabre praised, that's a good method. Seeking Defeat interjected hesitantly. But the wind is blowing towards us. They looked up and saw that the wind was indeed blowing towards them. Everyone exclaimed in unison. In the midst of their worry, Fabre suddenly clapped his hands and exclaimed, I've got it! Seeking Defeat asked eagerly. What is it, sir? Fabre's face flushed with excitement as he explained, If the wind is blowing towards us, can't we just conceal our scent? Yinny thought for a moment and agreed. That's right. He stood up and looked towards the tree trunk, shouting loudly, Let's go for a little while and come back right away. Yinny was shocked upon hearing this and exclaimed, Fabre. As he ran, she quickly grabbed his clothes to stop him, but she couldn't hold him back. Fabre. The golden furred bee. King is a dangerous intermediate poisonous creature, she warned. Instead of being frightened, he became even more determined. Just once I'll touch it and come back right away, he said. Suddenly a large rock rolled towards them, causing both of them to exclaim in surprise. The rock continued to move forward, creating a rumbling noise. It stopped in front of the golden-furred bee king's nest. Both of them were frightened by the scene before them. Fabre trembled and cried out. Bees swarmed out of the tree trunk, emitting a menacing aura. Yinny quickly hugged him and ran in the opposite direction, saying fearfully, Let's run first. Fabre. Fabre struggled to speak due to being held tightly, and the once peaceful forest became chaotic. The dense fog still lingered above the forest. As the day turned towards evening, the forest was covered with a thin layer of dusk. Fabre sat, cross-legged on a rock, lost in thought, and then said dejectedly, There's no way, is there? He closed his eyes, trying to calm down and organize his thoughts. We need to go against the wind to start a fire, but we're stuck between the people from the 4 sects and the swarm of bees, he thought. Remembering the bees with fluffy fur like clouds, his lips tightened. And he thought to himself, the golden-furred bee king is different from the bees I know. He opened his eyes, touched his chin, and recalled Yinny hugging him as they escaped. He couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. Even from 30 meters away, he could sense the buzzing of the bees. The hornets aren't this intense, he thought. Someone suddenly called out behind him. Fabre, come here. He turned around to see who it was and said, Yinny. Yinny brought some centipedes with 2 on her shoulders and 1 in each hand. She approached him with a smile and said, They seem to have eaten everything. Since they kept flying around, I brought them here. She showed him a centipede that was making sounds. Thank you, Yinny, he said gratefully. The centipedes crawled onto him. Fabre watched them and said gently, They've become tamer now. Yinny sat down beside him, and although they didn't say a word to each other, the atmosphere became warm and cozy. They sat together for a while before Yinny broke the silence. Did you find out anything else? He hesitated and replied, I want to observe some more. She looked concerned and said, Sorry for rushing you, Fabre. Take your time. Don't be in a hurry. He felt a surge of pressure upon hearing her words, but just smiled wryly to himself. Just then, Yinny looked ahead and exclaimed, Fabre, look over there. 2 monkeys were fighting near the tree trunk, surrounded by buzzing bees. Are those monkeys? Why are they fighting? He wondered. One monkey raised its hands, threatening the other, which responded with similar threats. Yinny covered her mouth, exclaiming, Oh my, they must be really angry. Fabre remained silent. A sudden fragrance wafted through the air, and Fabre called out, Yinny. He looked around and said, I think there's a certain scent. It seems to be coming from the golden-furred bee king's nest. He carefully speculated, could it be? His expression turned serious as he thought about his speculation. Could it be pheromone? He quickly pointed towards the tree trunk and exclaimed, "Yinny, we need to get out of here. The bees will get agitated and come after us." Yinny didn't know what was happening but still said, "Okay, got it." She quickly stood up, put her arms under his, and ran with him just like before. Fabra was impressed by her quick reaction. Just as they jumped up and ran, a loud explosion occurred on the ground below, sending rocks and debris flying everywhere. Yinny held him as they landed, and they slid across the ground. She froze, her expression stunned, as she looked at the scene before her. Seeing the swarm of bees rushing towards them, she stuttered, "Oh no, oh no!" The bodies of the two monkeys had exploded on the ground, and the bees were swarming down, feasting on them. One monkey was still twitching and moaning. Large swellings appeared on the monkey's arm, and the bees joyfully descended upon it. Yinny was still frightened by the sight of the monkeys becoming a feast for the bees, and said, "That was close," Fabra continued. "It was—" Yinny turned to him curiously and asked Fabra, "How did you know the golden-furred bee king would attack? You told me to get out of there before we heard its sound, didn't you?" He remembered the fragrance from the tree trunk and stuttered, "Ah, it was because of the scent." Yinny thought for a moment and said, "Now that you mention it, there was a yehop fragrance." Upon hearing the name, Fabra's expression changed to one of surprise. He looked at Yinny's calm face and thought to himself, "Can the silver flower really distinguish pheromones?" He asked if she knew the scent from earlier. Yinny smiled and replied, "Of course I do." Yinny smiled and said, "I know it." Then she continued, "The scent emitted just now is similar to that of yehop fragrance." Before she could finish speaking, he rushed over, grasped her shoulders tightly, and excitedly said, "That's it." Yinny blushed and called out, "Fabra." Overjoyed, he buried his face in her shoulder and cried. Feeling their close contact, her face turned even redder, although she didn't know why he was crying. The centipede hid in his chest, poking its head out. Fabra hid his face in her chest, smiled, and said, "A plan now, a way to wipe out the 4 sects and obtain the honey." In the dark night, people gathered around the bonfire, roasting food in their own groups, with some keeping a strict watch around them. A man raised his head drinking wine, his cheeks flushed red, seemingly tipsy. Beside the warm bonfire with the aroma of roasted fish, he finished drinking, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and laughed loudly. "Delicious." The man opposite him curiously asked, "When do you think we'll be able to go get the honey?" The wine drinker thought for a moment, before responding, "I'm not sure. 3 days ago, we still saw them running around everywhere, but now they're suddenly quiet." The man guessed, "Maybe they're about to do something." The scar-faced man agreed. "Yeah, probably." Suddenly he asked, "Does the real beehive really make money?" The other man laughed. "Good heavens, are you kidding me? If we make it from the golden beeswax of the king, it's extremely valuable, only usable by royalty. They'll definitely just take the honey and discard the beehive, leaving it for us." The man smiled mischievously, thinking of something. "And if they fail and die?" The other man rubbed his hands together, mimicking the smile. "And there's Tang Yin-ni, known as the 3 flowers of the martial world. We need to be careful not to let her harm us again." Thinking of her beautiful appearance, he smiled and said, "Not a bad idea. That figure." The man opposite him licked his lips, looking lustful. "Just thinking about it makes me itch all over." A man beside them joked, "Who knows, maybe one of us will become the son-in-law of their family." A disgusting voice chimed in, "Of course, we have to repay the favor for saving our lives." Suddenly, a strange scent wafted through the air, making him pause and sniff. The group slowly stood up, discussing among themselves. Where's this scent coming from? Could it be the fragrance of the poisonous flower? It must be. The scent is as beautiful and sweet as the flower itself. Under the soft moonlight, the fragrance gradually became stronger. Upon hearing a rustling sound from behind, a man turned around curiously and asked, "What's that noise?" The group stood up, looking into the distance where something dark and indistinguishable was approaching. As it drew closer, everyone's expression turned shocked. They gasped. "What is that?" Someone recognized it and shouted, "It's the queen bee!" Upon hearing this, everyone panicked, stood up, and urged each other to run. The swarm of bees charged like rain, each one fiercely aggressive. Despite their efforts, the group couldn't escape being stung by the bees, their pun swelling. Weak cries for help were heard. On the ground, a mixture of flowers and fruits was scattered, emitting a strange fragrance. This mixture wasn't randomly scattered, but was deliberately arranged. Fabre and Yini stood behind a rock, watching the swarm of bees move towards the source of the fragrance. Yu Jiang exclaimed, "The bees are all flying towards one place." Yini nodded in agreement. "Yes, it's true." She turned to Fabre and asked curiously, "Fabre, what exactly did you do? I didn't expect the bees to go crazy because of the scent of those flowers." He smiled and replied, "I issued a total attack order to the bees." She recalled the flowers and fruits he had asked her to prepare and said softly, "A total attack. I just crushed the flowers and fruits and scattered them." She understood upon seeing the fragrance emitted by the mixture. It turned out that the scent was the signal for a total attack. Fabre explained pheromones are chemical signals that animals of the same species use to communicate with each other. He emphasized especially social insects like ants and bees use pheromones very actively for communication. To make her understand better, he explained in detail. "The type of pheromone I used is the scent that bees release when they launch a total attack called xomine acetate." Yini thought of the densely gathered bees and marveled. "You're saying that the fragrance of these flowers is identical to the scent when the bees launch an attack. That's amazing." Upon hearing her praise, he blushed slightly and said, "Still, it's more surprising that you, Miss Yini, can distinguish that scent." She smiled humbly. The Tang clan specializes in poisonous medicine, so being sensitive to fragrances is normal. Fabre looked ahead, nodded her, and replied, "That's right." He gazed at the tree he had been waiting for several days, his voice filled with suppressed excitement. "The queen bee has led the swarm to launch a total attack. I think it's time for us to move in too." The leader walked forward, stepping through the lush grass, and excitedly said, "Let's go get the queen bees, honey." He was holding an object wrapped in fabric and tied carefully. The three of them proceeded cautiously until they reached the tree trunk, where they saw a large, ominous cavity. The group seemed hesitant. Yuejiang tried to steady their nerves and cleared his throat, saying, "Fabre is very dangerous. Let me go first and lead the way." They entered one by one, and upon looking around, they exclaimed in amazement, "Oh my, look at that!" The beehive is enormous. Above them was a gigantic beehive, golden and intimidating. The hexagonal cells were perfectly constructed, giving a pleasing sensation to behold. Yuejiang lit a fire to create smoke and whispered, "Fortunately, the bees seem to have flown out." Upon hearing the strange sound, Fabre glanced over curiously and asked, "What's that?" Yuejiang looked incredulous, then took a closer look, his tone turning uncomfortable. "There's no honey. How can that be?" "The cells are completely empty," Yini asked in a low tone. "Is it really true that there's not a single one?" as Fabre said. Yuejiang stroked his chin and replied, This is unprecedented. It's strange." Fabre suddenly exclaimed, "Could it be?" He voiced his thoughts. "This beehive has absolutely no eggs." Yuejiang wondered if this was related to the absence of honey. Fabre boldly hypothesized, perhaps the bees prepared to leave beforehand, so they swallowed all the stored honey. He concluded it's likely because they sensed too many human traces recently. Yini responded dejectedly, "So that's it." To verify his statement, Fabre went to a nearby beehive, observed it, and said, "Yes, when the bees decide to migrate, they stop laying eggs because they no longer have the time or ability to care for the larvae." Suddenly, his body froze as he gazed at the scene before him. Behind the beehive, a part of a bee's body was visible, but it seemed unusually large. Fabre asked Yuejiang with a strange smile, "If you don't rest and continuously use your agility skill, how long can you maintain it?" Yuejiang was puzzled by the question, but replied, "If I run at a moderate pace, I can maintain it for about half-hour a day." Curious, he asked, Why did you suddenly ask that? Just then, Seeking Defeat's voice came from outside Fabre. Young master, he stuttered. The queen bee. Recalling the scene he just witnessed, he panicked and urged, the golden bees are returning. You must leave immediately. Fabre didn't rush out. Instead, he bent down as if trying to retrieve something. He hesitated, saying, wait just a moment. Yuejiang hastily shouted, let's go. Fabre, young master, give up. Yini grabbed Fabre's collar, saying, Fabre, hurry up. Seeking Defeat continued to urge from outside. Hurry up and get out. Fabre quickly followed, hiding something in his chest. The moonlight remained bright in the sky. The three of them returned to their team, breathing heavily. A nearby companion exclaimed, that was close. Yini exhaled, relieved that they had escaped before the bees returned. The creature in Fabre's chest, suffocating, poked its head out to breathe the fresh air. Yini saw Fabre holding it and asked in surprise, Fabre, what are you holding? Fabre smiled. He revealed the enormous bee, explaining, this is the queen bee. Since there was no honey, we brought the one that produces honey back. Yuejiang was shocked. A queen bee. Yini looked at the bee, trying to appear cute, and hesitated. Fabre, young master, could it be? Suddenly, Yuejiang and Yini's expressions changed. The bee in Fabre's chest let out a deafening scream. Fabre added fuel to the fire, saying, soon the bees will realize their queen is missing and chase us. Behind them, the swarm of bees gathered, forming dark clouds in the sky. Fabre, unaware, smiled and said, let's run. Thus a perilous chase for their lives began. Several days had passed since the deadly honeybee race started. Looking at the queen bee's sparkling eyes, Fabre stroked its head reassuringly, saying, calm down. We'll bring you to a place where no one can bother you. During this period, the group had reduced their sleep time to move at full speed. Observing their current state, it was clear they were exhausted. As they rested, Fabre pointed into the distance, exclaiming, it's here. Everyone panicked, looking in that direction. One of them said helplessly, I'm done. I can't run anymore. On the way here, several team members from the poisonous blood team had fallen behind. Fabre made a mental note that he must master the agility skill properly to win next time. Suddenly, someone fell forward, shouting, ah! A nearby companion exclaimed in surprise. Another one fell behind. As they ran and looked back, they saw the person lying flat on the ground. A teammate shouted, Dragon Slayer has fallen. The result was that Dragon Slayer from the poisonous blood team was left behind. Fabre urged everyone to use their agility skill to run faster, thinking to himself that if they distanced themselves from the queen bee, they wouldn't be attacked anymore. A defeated young man was panting heavily and asked Sir Fabre, can we escape? Fabre replied with some uncertainty. Maybe we can. 3 days later, despite his best efforts, Yuejiang couldn't continue anymore. He collapsed to the ground, coughing and whispering to the two people in front of him. I'm sorry, Sir Fabre. I can only go this far. At this moment, Fabre and Yini looked worn out and disheveled with tangled hair. The young man was shocked to see them and called out in concern, Master Emam Sendo. Yini, after a moment of silence, suggested that Fabre let her carry him. The young man was taken aback and refused. Miss Yini, I can run on my own, he said. Unexpectedly, Yini rubbed her face with both hands. After shaking off her fatigue, she became more energetic and smiled determinedly at the young man. I can do it. The people of Tang clan never give up. In front of the large gate of Tang clan, 2 guards stood upright, dressed in neat attire, holding weapons and doing their job seriously. Upon hearing the sound of footsteps from a distance, the 2 guards looked up confused and asked, Who's there? As they saw the figures getting closer, one of them exclaimed in surprise, Oh, it's the young miss who's back. They saw 2 people looking worn out with dark circles under their eyes, due to lack of sleep. Fabre was supporting Yini as they walked. The guards couldn't believe their eyes and asked aghast, Young miss, what's wrong? The entire Tang clan was thrown into chaos, and a signal flare was shot into the air to summon all direct descendants immediately. The clan leader and the elder heard the signal and rushed out, concerned. The clan leader asked, What's happening? Someone reported, It's the young Miss Yini. As they arrived, they saw Yinny looking exhausted, being supported by a servant, while Fabre stood beside her, looking anxious. The clan leader couldn't bear to look at their state and asked, disbelieving, "Is that true?" The clan leader hugged Yinny, pain etched on his face, and shouted at Fabre, "What's going on?" Fabre hastily knelt down and explained, "Please calm down, father-in-law. Yinny is just exhausted from 10 days of non-stop martial arts practice." He then added seriously, "But this isn't the time to discuss this. We need to go to the martial arts arena immediately." The elder asked, surprised, "What's going on at the martial arts arena?" Fabre didn't answer immediately, but reached into his chest as if to retrieve something. He held up the queen bee for everyone to see and continued. "This is the queen of the golden-furred bee, King. Soon the other bees will arrive. We need to get to the ancient tree in the martial arts arena now." The elder couldn't help but laugh loudly. "Ha ha ha, this young man is indeed promising. He will surely achieve great things in the future." The clan leader's expression wasn't as pleasant, and he questioned, "What do you mean? Didn't you go to collect honey? Why did you bring back the queen bee?" Before Fabre could respond, the elder put his arm around Fabre's shoulders and said, "Let's go." Fabre was taken aback and exclaimed. The elder used his martial arts skills to lift Fabre and jumped into the air, causing Fabre to panic and shout, "Oh my God!" The people below covered their faces due to the strong wind and dust. Fabre felt like he was flying through the air, dizzy and disoriented. Suddenly, he shouted in alarm, "Ah!" The elder looked back concerned and saw a familiar dark yellow cloud in the distance. Fabre warned, "The bees are coming." The elder remained calm and said, "So many bees. Did you bring them all here?" The elder increased his speed, saying, "Let's go quickly." Fabre was caught off guard by the sudden acceleration and shouted. The elder landed roughly, causing dust and rocks to scatter everywhere. He brought Fabre to a large ancient tree and announced, "We're here, Fabre." Fabre quickly held the queen bee and rushed towards the tree. He looked up at the large tree and said, "Golden-furred bee king, this is the place I told you about. From now on, this is your home." The bee in his hand fluttered its wings, seemingly confused. Fabre pointed to a large hollow in the tree and asked, "Is this okay?" The bee responded with a buzzing sound. The golden-furred bee king cautiously flew to the side of the tree to inspect it. After a careful examination, it turned to Fabre and buzzed happily. Fabre smiled, relieved, thinking that the bee seemed pleased. As the swarm of bees drew near, the elder called out to Fabre, "Let's leave quickly. The bees are coming." Fabre turned around and replied, "Yes, sir." As the swarm flew overhead, making a loud noise, everyone below looked up shocked and concerned. The golden-furred bee king was overjoyed to see its swarm and buzzed excitedly. It quickly led the swarm into the hollow tree, inspecting it carefully before settling in. The elder watched the scene, sighing in amazement. "I've never seen anything like this in my life." Fabre also looked on, sighing. As he saw the bees flying in and out of the tree, he felt relieved that the golden-furred bee king had been successfully relocated. A bee was lapping up water from a wooden basin. Seeing the bees gathering in groups to drink water, Fabre felt satisfied that he had provided the golden-furred bee king with some sugar water to revive them after their exhausting journey. People often say that eating together creates a bond, and kindness is nurtured through shared meals. Luckily, there's something similar here, like real sugar. How fortunate the group from Tang clan stood on one side, observing everyone with joy, commenting that they ate with relish. Upon closer inspection, they seemed quite endearing. Seeing the golden-furred bee king satisfied with the sugar water, he was secretly pleased. Doing this would likely reduce their wariness a bit. It would be even better if they recognized him as their master. Suddenly he exclaimed, "Ah, that's right." The clan leader, upon hearing this, asked again, "What is it?" He hesitantly asked, "What about Miss Yinny?" The old man glanced at him with a sarcastic smile. "You're just remembering now." Recalling his daughter's exhausted appearance, the old man's expression turned stern as he continued. She was so exhausted that I had to send her to her mother's care. But I didn't expect you to make her use her martial arts skills non-stop for 10 days. Fabre, upon hearing this, didn't dare look at the old man and responded awkwardly. Yes, father-in-law, I'm sorry. She only slept for about 2 hours each day, and the rest of the time was spent running. At this moment, the elder clan leader suddenly remembered something and asked Fabre, recalling the group he brought with him. The old man asked with concern, "What about the poison blood team? Where are they now?" Only then did he realize his mistake, and his face was covered in sweat. He uncertainly guessed they're probably lying somewhere on the road. I guess I have to go pick them up. The elder clan leader couldn't help but laugh upon hearing this. Ha ha! According to the report, the poison blood team was later brought back safely within the family's embrace. In Yinny's room, the warm sunlight streaming through the windows created a cozy atmosphere. After Fabre recounted everything to Yinny, she was overjoyed, seemingly relieved that the golden-furred bee kings had regained their strength. How fortunate, she said. Fabre smiled in agreement. Yes, Miss Yinny. Remembering the swarm of bees now in the mountains with the servants, he added, Currently, they're sucking nectar from the poisonous flowers in the Tang clan mountains. Yinny nodded upon hearing this. Oh, they look so adorable. Suddenly, a voice calling out 7 times interrupted their conversation. Mr. Fabre. Mr. Fabre. Fabre glanced outside and asked, What's going on? Seeking defeat, though in a hurry, still maintained propriety, gripping the doorframe tightly as he urged, Sir, you need to come out for a moment. He was panting heavily. Then continued, The golden-furred bee kings seem to be acting strangely, as if they're searching for something. Fabre pondered upon hearing this. He quickly ran outside with Yinny following closely behind. Above them, several golden-furred bees were waiting. Seeing the swarm flying scattered above his head, he exclaimed in surprise. Really, upon hearing his voice, the bees immediately looked towards him, their wings buzzing. Seeing them clustering around his head and body, he was perplexed. Hey, what are you doing? Yinny, seeing this, was also worried. Fabre, are you okay? The swarm of bees continued to pull at his arms. Looking at them biting tightly onto his clothes and pulling upwards, he anxiously asked, Why are you doing this? To his surprise, his feet gradually left the ground. He could only smile wryly in helplessness. The people on the ground looked up watching, as Fabre was pulled away by the swarm of bees. Yinny's mouth was agape in surprise as she called out after him. The swarm of bees pulled him to the base of a giant tree before releasing him. The sound of their wings, buzzing, filled his ears as he stumbled upon landing. His eyes widened in astonishment as he took in the scene before him. He was shocked, asking, What happened to your beehives? A bee flew behind him and nudged him forward. He cooperated, moving forward while saying, All right, I understand. You want me to go in? Upon entering, he glanced around and exclaimed in surprise. Seeing the neatly arranged honeycombs filled with golden honey, he couldn't help but exclaim inwardly that the hive was already quite well constructed and that they were diligently gathering nectar. A bee slowly flew closer to him, glancing at him curiously. It turned out to be the queen bee looking at him with affection. She flew onto his arm and gently flapped her wings. He asked softly, You want me to lift you up? The response was a few vigorous wing beats. However, more bees gathered around, covering his face and distorting his features. He thought in frustration that these bees were clinging to him, making it impossible to move. He bent down to lift the queen bee as she wished, seeing her large, shiny eyes looking up at him. The queen bee slowly closed her eyes, her front legs reaching out to touch his face. Fabre was shocked, exclaiming, Hey, wait a minute, but it was too late. The queen bee had already moved in close to his face, causing his face to flush instantly. He groaned inwardly. He felt his lips touch something soft, and his entire body became hot. His eyes grew hazy, and his mind spun. He swallowed hard, surprised to discover what was happening. The swarm of bees flew around watching as Fabre was kissed by the queen bee. As their lips parted, a bubble formed between them. He quickly released her and took a deep breath. Covering his mouth with his hand, he stuttered, his face red. "You... Queen Bee, this is my first time. What are you doing?" You feel like your whole body is out of control, filled with terror. His entire body went limp and fell to the ground with a thud. His eyes flashed with light as he raised his head to search for the queen bee, his teeth clenched in anger. When he saw it seemed to be smiling at him, he didn't understand and wondered, "What did you feed me?" After having intimate contact with the queen bee, Fabre lay curled up on the ground. His face twisted in pain. He coughed weakly, feeling his face burning, hot, and white foam flowing from his mouth. He felt a strange discomfort and itchiness spreading throughout his body. He rolled around but couldn't alleviate the discomfort. His eyes became blurry, and fluids flowed from his nose and mouth. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding loudly. He reached out a hand towards the queen bee, coughing weakly, and asked suspiciously, "What did you feed me?" As his eyes began to close, he saw it looking at him with an innocent expression, calling out. Before he completely lost consciousness, he heard Yinny's worried voice calling out, "Fabre! Fabre!" followed by the image of her, calling out to the clan leader. "Grandfather, something's wrong with Fabre." The clan leader responded gravely. "It seems he's ingested a powerful elixir." As his vision darkened, he heard Yinny's panicked cry, "Fabre, snap out of it," followed by the clan leader's voice, "I'll help him." When he opened his eyes again, he saw Yinny holding a towel ready to place it on his forehead. Seeing him awake, she smiled and said, "Fabre, you're awake?" He sat up, rubbing his head, and looked around, asking, "Where am I?" She replied, "You're in the Tang clan's medical hall." She gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and explained what happened. "When we saw Fabre being dragged back by the golden-furred bee king grandfather, and I rushed over, but when we arrived you were already unconscious, so we brought you here." She asked if he remembered what happened, and he hesitated before responding. Recalling the scene, he covered his face, his mind in disarray. Yinny noticed his distress and asked, worriedly, "Fabre, are you okay? Is there anything wrong with your body?" Seeing him remain silent, she suggested, "Should we call grandfather over?" He hastily stopped her. "No, it's not necessary." He fell silent again, then took a deep breath. He gathered his thoughts and explained, "The queen bee fed me its food, which probably caused this." Yinny asked curiously, "What did you eat?" He seemed uncertain. "I'm not sure what it's called, but if I had to name it, I'd call it Bee King G." She repeated the unfamiliar name, Bee King G. He smiled and nodded. "Yes, the bees collect nectar and pollen to survive. Only the worker bees who work their entire lives eat the nectar and pollen." She asked, "What about the queen bee?" He explained, "From birth to death, it only eats the Bee King G produced by the worker bees." It dawned on him. So the Bee King G the queen bee fed me is actually royal jelly. Yinny understood it. Turns out it's the queen bee's lifelong food. His voice became excited. "But Bee King G has special effects." She asked, "What kind of effects?" He enthusiastically explained. "Normally worker bees only live for a month, but the queen bee by eating Bee King G can live 60 times longer. Isn't that extraordinary?" She was taken aback. Fabre calmed down. Her face turned red as she coughed lightly to cover her embarrassment. "Ah, I see. The mystery is solved," she continued. "The internal martial arts technique Fabre practiced is called 5 toxins, returning to this origin. Although it's only an elementary mental technique, it can't absorb the entire energy of the elixir." Yinny sighed in relief. The honey of the golden-furred bee king is equivalent to 2 months of internal energy, right? Fabre has achieved 60 times the effect, and he already has 10 internal energies. Upon hearing her words, he was stunned, unable to speak. 10 internal energies. At this moment, Yinny hesitated. "There's still..." She covered her face with a towel to hide her embarrassment. "Later, you should take a look in this, silver mirror. It seems Bee King Z has other effects." Upon hearing this, he opened his eyes wide in surprise. "Other effects?" Fabre touched his face. "Wondering silver mirror." When he looked at himself in the mirror, he was taken aback. There's something strange about my face. He realized, so royal jelly has this effect. The country boy from Hainam was nowhere to be seen. Faber gently touched his cheek. My facial features have become more refined, and my skin is softer like a woman's. As he thought of something, sweat dripped from his face, and his face turned bright red. He forgot to withdraw his finger from his cheek. He imagined himself in a feminine version, smiling brightly. "Hello, I'm Fabre." He panicked, covering his face. "What kind of royal jelly did the queen bee feed me?" He hastily lowered his head, fumbling with his belt, holding his breath to avoid making a sound. Then he pulled down his pants to check if everything was still there. After checking, he laid on the ground, looking up at the ceiling, sighing in relief. Luckily, it's still there. He remembered Yinny's words that if his grandfather hadn't led the way, something big would have happened, and he told himself that he should go thank him. He had almost lost his life, but was saved. Today was a day with quite cold weather, with snow and fog making the distant mountains seem to appear and disappear. The visibility was greatly obstructed, and only the treetops of the nearest forest could be seen. Fabre walked on the path he usually took, but he felt a strange sensation as everyone kept staring at him. Seeing the young ladies looking at him and smiling, he thought to himself that today he suddenly felt unfamiliar gazes, probably because his internal energy had increased. He hurriedly ran away, as if being chased by a ghost, telling himself that he had to escape from here first, leaving behind the burst of laughter from the young ladies. It was at the dining hall of the Sichuan Tang clan, also known as the Sichuan building. Faber stood outside the door, hesitating and not daring to enter. He peeked from outside, observing the inside. He saw that the dining table was filled with delicious dishes with a variety of flavors. At this moment, everyone had taken their seats, and the servants were serving more dishes. The lady of the house, distracted, turned her head and saw him. She observed him carefully and exclaimed, "Oh, my son-in-law's face looks brighter, doesn't it?" Then she asked if he was feeling better. Faber bowed his head, clasped his hands, and replied, "Yes, thank you, mother-in-law. I'm sorry for worrying you." She patted her hands, genuinely happy, and said, "It's okay. It's a good thing to have a fortuitous encounter." Then she turned to her daughter and teased her. "Look at this complexion. Yinny will surely like it." Yinny's face turned red with embarrassment, and she murmured, "Mother." After that, she stuttered, and Fabre quickly sat down. In the midst of the ladies' happy laughter, he softly replied, "Yes." Everyone had taken their seats, and the servants were serving the final dishes. As the servants poured tea, the patriarch asked Fabre, "Is your body feeling better now?" Fabre nodded and obediently replied, "Yes, thank you, father-in-law. I'm sorry for worrying you." Then he continued respectfully, "Thank you, grandfather. I heard that you examined my body." The elder smiled and said, "Having a fortuitous encounter is something to be happy about." The patriarch intervened. "Then tell us what happened." He couldn't hide his curiosity. "We've heard about B. King Ji from Yinny. What exactly happened?" Faber didn't know where to start. He habitually touched his face and began to speak. He remembered his first kiss and closed his eyes, saying, "Perhaps it was because I pleased the ancestors that the golden-furred bee king tried to repay me. Therefore he was pulled back to the nest and suddenly fed Bee King Z. Then he happily concluded, I think everything that happened originated from this." The lady covered her mouth and exclaimed, "How strange!" The elder sighed. "Even mid-level creatures know how to repay kindness." Then he suggested, "Maybe we can try to find more of that Bee King Z. If we can, it will be very useful to our Tang clan." The patriarch added, "Just the honey of the golden-furred bee king is already quite useful. If it's Bee King G, it will surely be even more helpful." The lady was only concerned about the beautifying effects of Bee King G, and excitedly asked son-in-law, "Can you find more Bee King G?" Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he cleared his throat. Yinny also turned to him and asked, "Is that right, Fabre? Can you find it again?" He closed his eyes and replied softly. He thought to himself that if it were ordinary bees, they would need to build many separate nests for Kiemeta the queen bee called royal chambers, and utilize worker bees to collect royal jelly. Recalling the scene of seeking defeat, fleeing from the swarm of bees, he shouted, "Fabre Gongzi!" Isn't this a completely different story? He speculated that if they tried to do the same with the intelligent, golden-furred bee king, they would surely be turned into beehives immediately. Thinking of the queen bee's innocent appearance, he pondered. Originally, royal jelly was food for larvae created by worker bees, but he was directly fed by the queen bee. If so, wouldn't this substance be completely different? After a moment of silence, he spoke up. Here, I'll say it straight. It's probably impossible. The elder asked hurriedly, Why can't it be done? What's the reason? The lady also asked anxiously, Son-in-law, why can't it be done? He asked back, Even if it can be eaten, does anyone dare to eat it? The patriarch then speculated, Is it because of the strange taste or smell? He shook his head slightly. It's not like that. Then he gave a shocking answer. This bee king Ji is secreted from the queen bee's mouth. It seems that it needs to be directly transferred from the queen bee's mouth. Fearing that others wouldn't understand, he explained further. It's like kissing. The queen bee's substance must enter the mouth to be transferred. The elder was shocked. What in contact with the queen bee? The lady also stuttered. What? The patriarch had to give up hope, saying, Then it seems it can't be found again. Unless it's Fabre, who is favored by the golden-furred bee king, others can't do it. Suddenly, a pair of chopsticks fell on the table, making a noise that attracted everyone's attention. Yinny didn't look at him, but asked in a low tone, mouth-to-mouth contact. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and glance at him, asking, Fabre, did you have mouth-to-mouth contact with the golden-furred bee king? In the quiet night, only the gentle moonlight shone down, casting a soft, shimmering light on the water. A scarred hand clenched tightly, making the fierce blue veins bulge. A robust man sat deep in thought, as if pondering something. This man was none other than the mighty Wulin Alliance leader, Zhou Zhongshui. Suddenly, a gentle female voice came from outside, interrupting his train of thought. Alliance leader, I've brought tea. Zhou Zhong looked up and said, All right, come in. The woman who entered was slender, with a beauty mark under the corner of her mouth. She carefully carried the tea in her head, bowed. Zhou Zhong glanced at the woman and said gently, I've prepared Shishan Bai Lu tea. He clasped his hands together in front of his chest and sighed. Tea from my hometown. The woman poured the tea and said, Yes, this is the famous tea from Shishan Nanchang. He listened and spoke softly. I thank you. I'll truly savor this tea. The woman watched intently as he lifted the cup. Zhou Zhong brought the cup to his lips, slightly opening his mouth to take a sip. Suddenly, an urgent voice came from outside. Alliance leader, your subordinate advisor, Zhuge has come. The worried tone made him put down the cup and ask, What's the matter at this late hour? Come in. Zhu Zhao was a young man with a dignified appearance. He entered, clasped his hands together, and said, I'm sorry to disturb you while you're resting, Alliance leader. He then reported on the main matter. Actually, we've just received an urgent report from the Tang clan in Sichuan, so I thought it was better to inform you immediately. Zhou Zhong replied calmly. It's all right. Advisor, since you've come in a hurry, it must be an important matter. Go ahead and say it. Zhu Zhao stepped closer and reached into his sleeve to retrieve something. He placed a scroll on the table and said, Bloodhand Devil Killer Yun Xiang. When he heard that the Tang clan had obtained Yun Xiang's head and the secret manual of the Bloodhand, Poisonous Palm Zhou Zhong couldn't help but slam his hand on the table, shattering the teacup. He shouted angrily, What? Because he used too much force, his hand was shaking. He clenched his other fist and gritted his teeth, asking, How and where did they obtain the Bloodhand, Poisonous Palm, that terrifying martial arts technique? Zhuge bowed his head and replied, Previously, Yun Xiang was probably hit by the poisonous palm of the Wan Du Shen Jun, and his whereabouts were unknown. Later, he drifted to Hainan and hid there. As if remembering something, he seemed interested and added, Moreover, there's a very interesting story. According to the intelligence, the notorious devil Yun Xiang was actually defeated by a young hero and a poison user. Zhou asked in surprise. What did you say? A young hero and a poison user? He opened his fan and continued. It sounds like a very interesting story. This is also a story that the Alliance leader will find fascinating. The woman who had been standing in the room heard Zhuge Hao's enthusiastic tone and said, "If you tell us more details, then..." At this moment, at the Tang clan's residence in Sichuan, everyone from both the main and secondary branches was present. After hearing the report, an elder nodded and said, "Yes, that's right, Patriarch." Another elder said angrily, "It turns out someone dares to sell information from our Tang clan to others." The elder beside him continued, "How dare they? We didn't expect someone to tarnish the reputation of the Tang clan like this." Faber saw that everyone's attitude was different from last time and turned to Yini, whispering in surprise. "Really? You're not harsh with your father-in-law?" She smiled and said, "Of course not." Fearing that he didn't understand clearly, she explained further. Daring to harm the family's reputation, even the elders in the clan are indignant. After all, we're still one family. The patriarch closed his eyes slightly and bowed his head, making a decision. "I've asked the Beggars clan to verify the information about them. Surely we'll have news soon. I plan to personally go to Yongshunfu." An elder asked worriedly, "So how do you plan to deal with them?" The patriarch had already made careful plans and replied, "For now, we must use destroy soul poison blood transmuting poison and intestine cutting poison." According to what he said, when the blood ignites, the internal organs melt, and the person is submerged in unbearable pain, as if their soul is about to leave their body. We'll finish them off with the 7 treasures soul-severing poison. Faber's mouth dropped open. The patriarch turned and ordered Yue Jiang summon the poison elimination team immediately. "We'll set off right away." He bowed his head respectfully and replied, "Yes, Patriarch." The poison elimination team was quickly summoned. At this moment, everyone was gathering in the courtyard, standing in formation, facing the patriarch, and waiting for orders. Before leaving, he didn't forget to remind Fabre, son-in-law, "We'll be on our way. You should rest and take care of your health." He clasped his hands together, bowed his head, and replied, "I understand, father-in-law. Please be careful." He listened and said confidently, "Be careful. What do I need to be careful about? It's actually them who should be cautious." Having spoken, he and the team quickly departed. The resounding voice still echoed, "Let's go. We'll bring them down. Repay them 100-fold, and punish them 100 times. Everyone responded in unison. "Yes, Patriarch." Recalling the people dressed in black who were carefully concealed, he asked curiously, "Miss Yini, are those people the poison elimination team? I've come here before, but this is the first time I've seen them." She replied, "Ah, they specialize in handling vicious tasks." Yini smiled and added, "Mainly, they deal with eliminating others, which is why they're called the Poison Elimination Team." He listened and broke out in cold sweat, thinking to himself that it was far from just being a simple, vicious task. Suddenly, someone behind him coughed. The two turned around to see who had arrived. He clasped his hands together, bowed his head, and greeting seniors of the Tang clan. The leading elder spoke, coughing, "Ah, yes. I've heard that you've encountered a rare opportunity." He didn't show any arrogance. Instead, he humbly responded to the elders. In his mind, he couldn't help but speculate wildly. Could it be because of the golden-furred bee king? The leading elder covered his mouth, coughed incessantly, and then spoke. "We came to you because we have a matter that requires your assistance." Still confused, he asked again, "What is it?" Before he could finish his question, the leading elder hastily interrupted. No, it's not about the honey of the golden-furred bee king. Don't think we're greedy for that." Someone behind him chimed in, "Exactly all the precious medicines and treasures in this world are already destined to have their masters. Fabre saw that the two elders were still beating around the bush and suspiciously asked, "Then what is it, the Koshia?" Elders exchanged a glance, looking embarrassed, and cleared their throats. After a moment, the leading elder walked closer to him, placed a hand on his shoulder, and spoke in a mysterious tone. He leaned in closer, his face slightly red, and whispered, "Isn't it about the Zidane pill? I heard it was created by our son-in-law, so the right to decide belongs to him." At this moment, he seemed to understand and smiled faintly. Then he took out 3 Zidane pills, juggled them in his hand, and laughed. "Ha ha! I've been trying to adapt to the Tang clan, and there are still many difficulties. If the elders could support me a bit, it wouldn't be impossible." The elders relaxed and laughed loudly. Our son-in-law is indeed a clever one. From now on, we'll fully support you. Just relax and live within the clan." The former clan leader opened the door and saw a scene of joyful laughter. He asked, "What are you discussing that's so joyful?" The sudden voice made everyone stop. An elder who was about to receive medicine choked on his saliva and coughed. Everyone quickly came up with an excuse. "We were just chatting to strengthen our bond with our son-in-law." He also awkwardly said, "Of course, we were just discussing that, elders." The former clan leader smiled satisfied. "Ha ha ha, it seems you've finally realized Fabre's true value." Yini, with a sweaty face, looked at them, and everyone continued to laugh and agree. "Indeed, former clan leader, ha ha ha." Suddenly, a worried voice was heard. The former clan leader asked, "What's wrong?" The person reported without delay, "The Sichuan lord is on the brink of death." The crowd became shocked, and an elder couldn't help but exclaim, "What's going on?" Fabre hurriedly asked, "Did he follow the instructions for using the medicine?" The person hesitated before answering. After seeing the effect of the medicine, the Sichuan lord took additional concubines and used a dose several times the recommended amount. Upon hearing this, Fabre broke out in cold sweat and thought to himself, "Oh no!" The former clan leader held his forehead in pain and said, "We must go there immediately." Before leaving, he instructed Fabre, "You're the only man left in the house, so protect the women." "Understand?" Fabre obediently replied. "Yes, grandfather." The former clan leader quickly used his agility technique to leave. He watched the elder hurry away and wondered what was so urgent. The sky had turned dark. All the main houses of the Tang clan were lit up. Yini sat beside Fabre and asked, "How was your experience with the 10 poisons purification core technique?" "This time," he said uncertainly, "compared to the beginning, it's not as confusing now." He thought to himself that if 5 Venom's origin arts felt like a large flow of energy circulating in the body, then 10 poisons. Purification core technique was like 2 flows of energy working together like a 2-cylinder engine. Yini was delighted. "Now I'm sure I have a certain level of resistance to ordinary poisons." Then she continued, "Moreover, I can directly release energy outside or transfer it into objects." He was surprised. Really, after making up his mind, he gritted his teeth and said, "Let me try once." He looked at the dummy in front of him and slowly stood up. He picked up a flying dagger between his index finger and thumb and focused his mind. He muttered to himself, transferring his internal energy from left to right, making the 2 flows of energy rotate in the same direction. Gradually, a green energy appeared under his feet and quickly enveloped his entire body. Fabre slowly opened his eyes, and his gaze was also tinged with a faint green color. He thought to himself that when this energy flowed fully through his body, as the sound of release echoed in his mind, he stood on one leg and used his strength to launch the manhua, flying dagger towards the dummy. The flying dagger carried a green energy and pierced through the air. A loud bang was heard as the flying dagger accurately hit the middle of the dummy's abdomen, causing the fabric to tear apart. He was overjoyed, Miss Yini. "I succeeded," Yini smiled. "Fabre, you're amazing. You've successfully transmitted energy into the flying dagger." A group of people in black hiding nearby widened their eyes in shock as they saw the flying dagger pierce through the dummy and stick into the wall in front of them. They whispered to each other, One said, "Have we been discovered? Should we eliminate them?" Another disagreed. "No, it's just a coincidence." The other person holding a book lowered his voice. "Even if it's just a copy we've obtained. The Blood Hand Poison Claw technique. Our mission is complete. We should leave before things get complicated and return to our sect." The name couldn't hide the complacent smile. "Haha, you fools are careless at the martial arts field, so it's easy for me to escape." A strange scent suddenly wafted past, making him suspicious and snort. He whispered to his companions, "Is there a sweet fragrance coming from somewhere?" The group looked around, searching, and when they looked up, they suddenly spotted a bee staring back at them. The bee's expression didn't seem very good, and its buzzing sounded angry. In the darkness, a shrill scream suddenly pierced the night air, shattering the silence. Faber exclaimed in surprise. "What's going on?" Yini turned towards the source of the sound, speculating that there might be someone there. Behind the dummy, a group of suspicious black-clothed individuals were indeed present. They panicked and shouted, "Why is there a bee?" Their attire and behavior raised Yini's suspicions, and she concluded that they were intruders. For the safety of the Tang clan, Yini decided to jump towards them. She also ordered Fabre to shoot arrows. Fabre called out Miss Yini. The black-clothed individuals, realizing the situation was critical, shouted and retreated in disarray. One of them, bitten by the bee, cried out for help. "Get this thing off me!" The other two didn't stay to help. Instead, they fled, using their agility. Yini chased after them, shouting, "Stop!" She quickly pulled out a long black whip with numerous sharp spikes on it. Yini swung the whip forcefully at the opponents, but they dodged it nimbly. This caught her off guard. They had avoided her whip. The one bitten by this bee, knowing he couldn't escape, decided to stay and counterattack. He charged at Yini with a sword, shouting, "Die!" Fabre could only stand outside, shouting warnings to Yini, his voice filled with concern. The black-clothed individual, despite being bitten by the bee, still swung his sword down. Yini, being a skilled martial artist, held the whip with both hands and blocked the sword strike, glancing at her opponent with disdain. Then she forcefully whipped the spiked whip at his face, catching him off guard. Not giving him a chance to counterattack, she continuously whipped him. At this point, the bee flew away from him and soared into the air. When Fabre saw the black-clothed individual lying unconscious on the ground, he asked Yini worriedly, "Miss Yini, are you okay?" Yini retracted her whip and replied calmly, "I'm fine." Suddenly, the black-clothed individual let out a scream and fell silent, his body emitting dark smoke, his mouth agape. Fabre was shocked and exclaimed, "Who is this? Is he dead?" He couldn't help but curse inwardly. Yini bent down to examine the intruder, who had malicious intentions towards the Tang clan. Noticing his grayish skin and other symptoms, she concluded that he had taken poison to kill himself, apparently to hide something. The entire Tang clan was lit up with torches and lanterns, and the sound of shouting echoed through the night. "Capture them." After gathering the team, Yini gave a stern order. "We will immediately form a pursuit team and start chasing them." Fabre was to accompany her and Zhu Bai, the captain of the blood poison team. In the quiet night within the forest, the flickering flames of torches resembled fireflies, intermittently lighting up the darkness. The continuous shouts of "catch them" echoed through the night. The group continued their relentless pursuit. Zhu Bai shouted as they ran, "They can't have gone far. We must catch them at all costs." Fabre pulled out a group of centipedes from his head and decided, "Let's go." However, as soon as his foot touched the ground, it gave way beneath him. His entire body fell into a pit and he cried out in shock. Zhu Bai heard the cry and turned back, calling out, "Mr. Fabre." He and another person returned to pull Fabre out, asking if he was okay. Fabre climbed out, panting, and thanked them. "I thought I was done for." However, he felt something was off. He turned back to look and gasped softly. Behind them was a swarm of green snakes with red eyes packed tightly together. Fabre's body turned cold, and he broke out in a cold sweat. What's this, snakes? Jubai also had a face full of sweat. He observed for a moment and commented, "It seems to be a snake den. Snakes often gather where there's strong negative energy, especially this time of year. They're unusually aggressive. Be careful." Contrary to Fabre, the centipedes seemed to be enjoying themselves. Fabre muttered, "Indeed." The snakes stared at them, their mouths open wide, as if trying their best to intimidate them. Fabre found it puzzling. Strange water snakes and tiger-striped snakes aren't usually this aggressive. He looked at everyone apologetically. "Because of me, we've been delayed. It seems like it's about to rain. Let's hurry," Jubai responded. "Right, Mr. Fabre." Having lost precious time, the group continued to run at full speed. Seeing the light ahead, the person in front shouted, "They're over there. Catch them." Jubai pointed in a different direction. "You go that way." The three thieves frowned on high alert as they watched the group pursuing them. In the darkness, the rain poured down, and suddenly a thunderclap boomed. Both sides stared at each other, the balance of power clear. The leader of the group commanded Titan the encirclement. Jubai added, "You're surrounded. There's no escape." Then he and his men reached into their chests and pulled out their weapons. Everyone quickly drew their weapons. The black-clothed men were not intimidated and also drew their swords. The two sides were locked in a stalemate for a while, and then the person leading the Tang clan side shouted, "Attack!" and charged forward. The other side knew that they had to fight to survive. A man swung his sword at a black-clothed man, but was parried by the man's double-edged sword. The man beside him sneered, "These insignificant insects." Another man rushed forward to support him, shouting, "Get out of the way!" as he swung his sword at the man, causing him to fall backward. The people behind him cried out in alarm, "Be careful!" But it was too late. Suddenly, a beam of light shot towards the black-clothed man, catching him off guard. The young man who had just launched the attack swept his arm across the black-clothed man's head again, but this time the man was able to duck and avoid the blow. Finally, the young man threw his sword at the black-clothed man. It turned out that the previous move was the famous 3 Shadow Slayers technique of the Tang clan. 3 consecutive sword beams shot towards the black-clothed man, forcing him to retreat backward. He jumped up to avoid a sword under his feet with all his might. However, another sword seemed to anticipate his intentions and stabbed into his chest, causing a jet of blood to spurt out. The man hastily covered his chest with his hand to stem the bleeding. Jubai sneered, "You lucky bastard." Jubai stared at this other party, his voice filled with regret. "Consider yourself lucky that the rain washed away the poison on my darts." The wounded man clutched his wound and cursed. Another man was subdued, and Fabre was in charge of guarding the black-clothed man who was now bound. Jubai and the others stared at the remaining wounded man. At this moment, a strange voice echoed, drawing everyone's attention. "You miserable insects have gathered quite a crowd," Jubai warned alertly. "Who is it?" A man descended from the air, and with a single blow he shattered a large rock into many pieces. He was an old man with a ferocious face, and the red glow emanating from his eyes revealed his malevolent nature. Sensing the powerful aura emanating from the old man, Jubai warned everyone. He is a late-stage expert. The old man's entire body emitted a faint red glow as he laughed maniacally. After stopping his laughter, the old man asked the wounded black-clothed man, "Have you obtained it?" The man pulled out a book hidden in his chest and replied, "Yes, it's not the original, but a copy recorded by the Tang clan." Fabre, who had been eavesdropping from a distance, heard this and quickly turned his head to look. Recalling the words of the former clan leader, he felt anxious and worried. That's something only evil people would look at. He was frightened, thinking it was a copy of the evil book that his grandfather had read before. He hastily shouted to the people in front, "Be careful! That's the Blood Hand Poison Claw manual." Jubai's expression turned grave upon hearing the name. "What? It's a copy of the manual." The old man broke out in a cold sweat and cursed, "You damnable people!" Seeing the other party's indifferent attitude, Jubai couldn't help but scold. What kind of person would covet such a sinister thing? Reveal your identity. Ignoring Jubai's curses, the old man flipped through the book and smiled complacently. As I suspected, it's a copy, so it has the techniques but lacks the essential Ju. Still, it's enough. After glancing through the book, the old man closed it and ordered the black-clothed man. Though it's a kansmanina, bit rushed, there's no better way to announce our return. Shui Rong, I allow you to use the martial arts of our sect. It turned out that the black-clothed man's name was Shui Rong. Upon hearing the old man's order, he cupped his hands and bowed. I will comply. Then he lowered his hand towards the black-clothed man lying on the ground, who was either dead or alive. The blood on the black-clothed man's body suddenly rose into the air, filling the surroundings with a strong, fishy smell. Faber covered his head and cried out. What's going on? Jubai said uncertainly. That technique. In the black-clothed man's palm, a dense concentration of spiritual energy was forming, and the surrounding man blood was gathering towards it. The crowd realized that he was absorbing blood. With a clang, a sword stained with black blood fell to the ground. The man clutched his wound, which had begun to heal due to the old man's magic. The old man sneered. You're right. The old man's hands with long and sharp fingernails were condensing a red aura. He proudly introduced himself. I am Qiu Zhen, the elder of the blood cult. Qiu Zhene gazed at Fabre and evaluated. You're quite decent. Very good. He rubbed his hands together. His mouth filled with sharp teeth and drooled. He licked his lips. It's been too long since I've tasted someone with blood like you.